Good morning. It's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from me as well.
A warning from Tony Blair that Labour is lurching to the left and should focus on future-proofing the UK rather than engaging in leadership dramas.
A fifth child has died after getting into trouble swimming in a river with friends as a heatwave hits record temperatures.
The new energy price cap has just been revealed. We'll bring you the details amid warnings the Iran war will push winter bills sky high.
We'll also be talking about the troubling trend of deep fakes, how increasingly realistic videos are being used to con even the most wary of adults. And we'll see how illegal casinos are still able to target children to bet real money on gaming platform Roblox.
We are just getting the new energy price cap coming through. This, of course, is going to be for the period for July to September. We're obviously in the period of April to June, and it has come in at $18.50. That's the price people will pay for the average energy bill going forward. Let's bring this up and have a look at it in context coming out of the last few periods. This is done quarterly. Just a reminder, it's done quarterly. We're currently in the period, of course, from April up until June. This level, April up until June, was £1,641 per year for the average household. It is rising to £1,850 for the period from July to September for the average household. That's an increase of £290 per household for their energy bill, or an increase of 13%. We also have a new forecast that's just come from Cornwall Insights for the next quarter, for the fourth quarter of the year, for October to December, and that there in red as a forecast is a slight increase further to £1,900 per household. Now, it's worth putting this in context. Of course, this is most people's biggest bill at home, and it's an increase of nearly £300 or 13%. And that is going to be significant and painful for people. But for all the talk that we've had of oil prices, gas prices surging, they're up about 60% so far this year, you might be relieved that the increase isn't bigger. And of course, we've got the context of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine war over here, by the way, when at the peak of that, we saw it cross above 4,000. Not the 1,850 that we're talking about now, more than double of that, above 4,000, if things had been left to the free market to float freely. Instead, we brought in the energy price guarantee in October 2022. So these three bars didn't, in fact, play out at home. That was capped at £2,500, and that's the limit of what people ended up paying. But that's where it would have gone. This is free floating. This hasn't been capped yet, and we're seeing an increase only 13%, only £300 or so to £1,850 per household per year. Just want to bring on another chart. It's a little bit confusing, this, because you're going to see other numbers thrown out there that might make you think it's a bit less than that, because Ofgem is also considering a new consumption level. This is actually all quite encouraging. This is because households are using a little bit less energy per year than we had done previously. And so they're going to bring out a new average consumption level, which will give us this guidance of what people might pay per year. Don't forget, this average household bill, of course, is based on what you might use per year as opposed to what you actually use. So it's a guidance number. Anyway, if you use the new numbers, then the increase from the April number to the July number is, in fact, a little bit less. But that's not comparing like for like. So where we stand for today is to focus on the increase of about 13%, 13%, an increase of about £290 per household per year to £1,850. That'll be coming in for Sophie from, of course, July.
We've had a reaction from Ed Miliband, by the way, just as you were up at the wall, it's just come through. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband saying the rise in the price cap because of a war we did not choose is deeply unwelcome news for households across the country. We know people were under pressure before this crisis. That's why easing that burden is our number one priority. And he talks about some of the things that the government's done on cost of living, so freezing fuel duty, for example. This is quite interesting as well, because he then says the way to get bills down for good and avoid these price spikes is to go further and faster with this government's drive for clean, homegrown power we control. So I guess really doubling down on the what Ed Miliband has been pushing in government about renewable energy.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to Ofgem a little bit later this hour, so we'll get through to the details. Just the final number coming in there at 1862, so fractionally more than a 13% increase, but the ballpark there, as we were just discussing, and be interesting to get into the details of this later.
Yeah. Now, Tony Blair, Labour's most successful ever leader, he took the party to 3 successive election victories, and today he's warning Labour is playing with fire. So I wonder how that will go down with any potential leadership candidates.
His main claim is that Labour risks retreating to its comfort zone on the soft left, prioritising a growing welfare state and failing to prepare the UK for rapidly evolving technology.
I'm just going to jump up to show you a few things that he is calling for. So he says governments which succeed don't start with a personality contest. So in practical terms, he also made a couple of suggestions to prevent the UK being, as he says, relegated from the Premier League of nations. So the interesting thing about what he's saying is that anything needs to start with policy, not personality. These are a few of the policies that he talks about. So he talks about removing the obstacles to growth. So he singles out the Employment Rights Bill, the decision to raise national insurance for employers or the minimum wage. These things, he says, has given headwinds, not tailwinds, to British businesses. He also talks about energy prices. He wants to bring down energy prices and says that the Labour Party should reverse its North Sea policy, so new oil and gas licences, for example, as well. So perhaps not going to go down too well with Ed Miliband. And he says that we need to drive artificial intelligence training and education as well. So really trying to drive and push for artificial intelligence. This final one is interesting too, as Tony Blair is kind of known, if you like, as being Mr. Remain, Mr. Europe in a way. He's warned against a rush to rejoin the EU, saying reversing Brexit isn't the answer, and that any negotiation from a position of economic weakness, as in how the UK currently is not a good idea in any bargain. So I guess what he is trying to say here is that the Labour Party needs to focus much more on policies. There needs to be a policy debate rather than just a political debate and also a personality debate, which is what we're seeing, I think, he's trying to argue in this Labour leadership contest.
And quite clear, as Rob joins us, so we can discuss this a bit more detailed, that his view on the policy is it needs to be more in the middle ground, not further to the left. And I think there was some pretty implicit criticisms of the current policy. There's quite a long list he went through that he felt weren't putting the UK's economy in particular in its best possible footing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this will land like a thump in number 10, because whilst, you could read part of it as saying we don't need to focus on personality, we shouldn't be thinking about replacing the Prime Minister before we've decided what the policy is. Look, be in no doubt, he's basically saying to the current government, you failed, you mucked it up, you didn't have a plan, you don't have a plan. It's not good enough. You're governing from the comfort zone. Just Labour is what he calls it, how he characterises the current approach. And he says, given the huge challenges, the geopolitical challenges, domestic challenges, mainly he talks a lot about artificial intelligence, he just said it's not good enough, basically. It's not radical enough. The sort of intellectual heft and the thought isn't there. But at the same time, he is pretty scathing about the sort of shadow leadership contest playing out in the background as well. He talks about how it's basically shaping up as a fight between a camp trying to style itself as the modernising wing of the party, which thinks the answer is basically to go back in the EU. That's Wes Streeting. And he says that won't work. And he says on the other side, you've basically got a camp that thinks what you need to do is move further left on spending, further left on taxation. And I think this is the sort of pretty spiky part, spun with a rehash of the far-left critique about nothing good coming out of the last 40 years of neoliberalism, which presumably includes the last Labour government. So a direct attack on the entire narrative coming from the sort of nascent Andy Burnham leadership campaign there, suggesting that at the moment, the kind of conversation, the debate about what comes next is also not good enough.
I guess what I would say, though, is he's saying that there has to be a policy debate going on. There kind of is a policy debate going on, right? Wes Streeting said they want to rejoin the EU. Andy Burnham, as you say, is kind of laying out, I guess, the soft left critique of it. Just because he doesn't necessarily like the policies that are being put on the table doesn't mean that one isn't happening.
I think he seems to think that it's kind of, it's all too backward-looking, that the solution is either to go back to something Labour was or to go back into the EU, rather than necessarily gripping the big challenges coming down the track. You know, he talks about AI a lot. He also talks about welfare reform. He talks about immigration as well. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the impact this will have, that's harder to deduce, right? Like, it's easy for us to sort of sit around and kind of pick it apart and take it apart. I think a lot of Labour MPs dislike Tony Blair and will just rather if he'd just sort of shove off, quite frankly. But at the same time, it might give some pause for thought before they rush into what comes next.
The point on policy versus personality, I think, is more kind of central to what he's saying. Clearly, people are articulating some policies. And I think this is what jumps out to me. He says you should put policy first, politics last. Start with the question, what is the right answer for the country? And only when you have that do you engage in the political task of persuading people of it. Britain's in a mess precisely because in recent years it's done the opposite. And I think this is it's not just policy versus personality. It's long-term versus short-term, and it's, you know, make the hard decisions, not what's easy to sell to the electorate or to your party's base. I think that's what he's really getting at.
And the other thing that I think is interesting there is he's talking about the politics as well, as in don't start with a political question on reform. And I think there is an argument that the Starmer project started with a political project, which was to expel what they would describe as the far left from the Labour Party, right? And actually, you need a governing purpose, as Tony Blair puts it.
I do wonder whether he underplays the importance of personality, though, in terms of, yes, we are wrestling with, you know, a ballooning welfare bill, a geopolitical situation where, you know, Britain doesn't seem to really know where we're sat in the world. So there are these big policy questions. But I think this sort of stuff has to be bundled up in the kind of age of politics we are, in an effective vehicle to sell it. You know, you look at Donald Trump, you look at Nigel Farage, you know, you can argue that they haven't got the policy sat behind them, but what has sustained them is the personality. And I do wonder whether that's the kind of maybe the more dated part of this critique, is that he sort of thinks that with good, sensible policy, we'll get through all of this. Right, we may well do that, but to actually sort of win the fight, maybe you do need to parcel it up in a slightly more kind of personality-led populist way as well.
Rob, great stuff, thank you. We're going to keep discussing this, of course, throughout the programme. Next hour, Labour's former Director of Communications and Strategy, Keir Starmer's biographer and friend, Tom Bullman, will be joining us.
Now, some really sad news to bring you, because a fifth child has died from drowning after going swimming in open water as the heat wave peaked yesterday.
It's believed to be a 12-year-old boy who was swimming with friends in a river at Ribchester in Lancashire. A 60-year-old man also died in Cornwall after running into the sea to try and help two others who'd got into difficulty. It comes as the UK experienced the hottest day in May on record, with temperatures reaching 35 degrees in London.
Yeah, there's been a really, a warning from the Royal National Lifeboat Institution of the real risk of swimming in open water. The cold water shock actually often leads to hyperventilation. So even if you're a strong swimmer, that does not mean it's safe to go from the super hot heat wave into the very cold water.
Now, fraudulent motor insurance claims are on the rise. Scammers often try and earn money by deliberately causing a road collision or paying for fake adverts to trick people into contacting third parties rather than legitimate insurance providers.
So the worst affected area in England is Barking and Dagenham, followed by Birmingham and other parts of London. In Scotland, it's Crieff. In Northern Ireland, it's Crumlin. And in Wales, it's Cymais Bay.
Ollie's here to tell us a bit more, Ollie, about this.
Good morning. This is an analysis of 3.3 million insurance claims in 2025. And gone are the days of the whiplash claims, where it was a lot of personal injury. Remember, the government, I think it was 10 years ago, brought in changes there to limit how much compensation you can get. Now, a lot of the claims are to do with damage or fake damage to people's cars or scams that are happening. So one of the other ways that people are claiming is by, in Dagenham, one of the roundabouts there is quite popular for getting into the wrong lane, causing a collision and then putting a claim in. And in London and in the big cities, moped and motorcycle drivers going into oncoming traffic and then blaming victims for an incident that's happened there.
So this is something that is, I guess, really increasing, right? So it's a real worry, isn't it? I mean, I guess there's nothing you can really do to protect yourself about it. It's something that policymakers have got to try and challenge and tackle.
Yeah, they've noticed an increase over the past 2 years, and they're saying there are some ways, especially when it comes to scams, that you can protect yourself. So young drivers, obviously excited when they pass their test, will put up their pass certificate on social media. What some of the scammers are doing is taking the personal details from those pass certificates and then using those for fraudulent insurance claims. Also, be wary of job adverts that are online. So if you see a job advert for a driver that's needed, if a company is asking you for your driver licence number and for your insurance details, triple check that they're legitimate, because what's happening is some of the scammers are taking those details and then using them to put in fraudulent claims. And then, of course, the completely separate issue is people falling for fake insurers and thinking that they've got insurance when actually they don't. They come to crash, they go to claim, and they can't claim because they didn't actually have a bona fide policy in the first place.
Oliver, Christoph, thank you. It's been more than a year since Sky News revealed children using the gaming platform Roblox were being lured into gambling by illegal online casinos. Both Roblox and the Gambling Commission said they were taking action.
Our latest investigation, though, shows it's very much still happening, even when people openly admit they're underage. Our science and technology reporter, Mickey Carroll, has a story.
Roblox prides itself on letting children be anything they can imagine. Well, over a year ago, we reported that illegal casinos were targeting the game's young users and letting them gamble. Some of these children were betting hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of Roblox money. And Roblox told us at the time it was taking numerous steps to shut the casinos down. But when we checked in on how that was going, we found this. A plethora of casinos, some old, some new, all luring young Roblox users into gambling. On the chat rooms linked to the casinos, users openly admit they're underage, but their accounts remain active. Some are just 13 years old. These casinos advertise to Roblox users on social media and then ask them to log into the casino with their Roblox credentials. From that point on, they can gamble with their Roblox currency, which is bought using real money. Some casinos allow users to withdraw any winnings as Roblox items, others will let them be withdrawn as cryptocurrency. This isn't necessarily new. We found similar problems the last time we investigated, and that's exactly the issue. It seems that nothing has changed.
The fact that nothing's changed, I think I blame the unlicensed casinos, obviously, should shoulder the clear blame, but they're going to act in this way. So really what's more surprising and more saddening is that our statutory regulator, the Gambling Commission, hasn't done more to stop them. I think Roblox also has to shoulder some of the blame in this instance because it's providing what's effectively a cryptocurrency and allowing it to be used elsewhere outside of its website and not taking serious enough action to protect its customers, who are largely young people.
Roblox hasn't responded to our request for comment, but sources at the company told me it's playing whack-a-mole with these casinos, which are actually pretty bad for its reputation. It wants more support from regulators and law enforcement because it says while it can control what happens on its platform, it can't control what happens away from it. For the people campaigning to stop this kind of illegal activity, it's a familiar problem, one that seems to be intensifying.
It's become quite commonplace amongst children, 7 years and upwards, to actually now be gambling in that sense, and that is mad.
Sir Duncan Smith says these casinos target children because then they can create lifelong habits.
If you get children used to gambling their cash, then all that happens is it gets worse in later life.
The Gambling Commission told us they'd been in touch with Roblox about the casinos we found. The Commission's spokesperson said criminals running unlicensed websites are unscrupulous. They simply don't care about offering gambling to children or vulnerable adults. This is why we take reports of illegal sites extremely seriously and are already taking action against those flagged by Sky News. Right now, the people trying to stop these casinos are playing whack-a-mole. The problem is, while they're trying to catch up, it's children that are being harmed. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Well, following that Sky News investigation, one of the casinos you saw there, Rollbet, has shut down to all users. Another, Bloxflip, has banned UK users from its site. So Rollbet warned its users to withdraw any money from their accounts before it closed, saying it was shutting due to operational constraints, ethical concerns, management challenges and staff personal reasons. Right, we have been talking this morning about the intervention from one Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, former Labour leader, who has said that the party is playing with fire by having this leadership contest, which is all about personality, before they've had a policy debate. Well, let's talk to the government now, shall we? Dan Tomlinson, the Treasury Minister, is here. He also warns about, I guess, a kind of lurch to the left, if you like, if there is any leadership race. Is he right?
I think he's right about some things in his essay. I haven't had long to digest it, was just having a read on the way into Westminster this morning. I think he's right to say that the Labour Party should be careful not to fall into a debate about personality, but to focus on policy. I think that's really true. I think there's some things in there around, for example, the European Union, where it's my view that rather than rushing to radically change that relationship, we should stick to the red lines that were in our manifesto and focus on reform of the domestic economy. But on some things, I just disagree with him. So he says, for example, that our approach on workers' rights and making sure that the jobs market works for people wouldn't be an approach that he would take. But, you know, when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, there weren't that many people at all on zero-hour contracts. I'm not even sure they existed as a form of contract in our jobs market. Hundreds of thousands of people across the country having to deal with the insecurity of not knowing whether they'd have a shift the next day. We've said we are going to make sure that if someone's been on a zero-hour contract for a few months, that they'll have the right to move off it.
OK.
And that sort of change reflects the fact that this Labour Party is not stuck in this new Labour or old Labour battle, which he talks about a lot in his essay, but is about what are the problems facing the country today and what do we need to do to fix them, and that's what we're getting on with.
There was one bit that really struck me in his 5,000-word essay. So he says, governments which succeed don't start with a personality contest or a political question, as in how do we save the country from reform. They start with an idea, a project, a governing purpose. What is Keir Starmer's governing purpose?
My view on that, and we've heard Keir talk about it really clearly over and over again, is it is about providing security for our country. So both in terms of people's work, people's housing, our domestic security, and then on the international stage as well. That seems to be one of the driving and uniting forces of this government, both in the short term, you know, what are the changes that we can make to help people with the cost of living? Just last week, as the tax minister, I was working with Rachel Reeves on the decision on fuel duty, where we've extended that freeze, or supporting the farmers, or increases in the mileage rates, which will be a big news for people who do a lot of driving for their work. We've increased those rates from 45 to 55p. And then what are the long-term changes that we need on defence, on net zero, on making sure we can reduce our reliance on Putin's gas, those sort of long-term changes for our security too.
I guess so. If security is the driving mission, it does feel like some policies you have kind of go against that. So, you know, security and defence, for example, why then allow Russian crude oil if it was refined in other countries, if that is your number one priority? Or security of housing, for instance, you know, net additional dwellings figures show, you know, you had less new houses than the year before. So if that really is your driving purpose, it doesn't feel like it's joined up in terms of policies, right?
Well, so one of the foundations of more security in our country is higher economic growth. And we saw in the first quarter of this year, we had higher economic growth than any other country in the G7. Since we've been elected,
Can I just, on growth, and I do understand the point you're making, but on growth, it has been pretty pitiful growth for a long time. I'm not just blaming you guys for it, but it just feels a bit crazy to be on here saying, actually, we're all about huge economic growth. It's been bad.
You're right that over recent decades, we've had a real big problem with economic stagnation in our country. People's wages, for year after year, were increasing more slowly than prices under the previous government. Since we've been elected, every month, wages have increased faster than prices. In the latest quarter, the first 3 months of this year, we had higher economic growth than any other country in our G7. That foundation is what we're then able to build on to make sure, for example, that we can invest in our public services, make sure we can get government borrowing down, because that, in the end, is a cause of economic insecurity as well.
Can I ask about a social media ban for under-16s? It's something that's been in the news an awful lot recently, and lots of briefings today saying that the government is going to stop short of a full ban for under-16s.
So the consultation closed yesterday. My view is that this is a really serious and important issue. It came up so much on the doors when I was standing for election in 2024, and it still comes up now when I'm out and about meeting my constituents. When I was a backbench MP, I did a lot of work locally, and we were one of the first boroughs in the whole country where the teachers worked together, and we said we were going to ban phones in schools. The government's now taken the step in recent weeks to change the guidance, put it on a statutory footing, to basically say no to phones in schools. I think that's really, really good. The government will act and will go further on social media more broadly. I'm not going to preempt on your show this morning, Sophie, the steps that the Prime Minister and the relevant cabinet ministers.
Are you worried though?
But this is really serious.
Because I get the sense that this is something you actually do care about, quite seriously.
Yeah, about all the issues we've talked about.
Oh, no, of course. But, is there a risk that if you stop short of a full ban and say, oh, actually, you can just tinker around the edges, then the social media companies will just take advantage of that?
So we definitely can't just tinker around the edges. This is a really serious issue affecting millions of young people growing up in this country. You know, I have a little 2-year-old. My plan is just not to put him anywhere near a smartphone until he's 16. We'll see whether I can withstand that. But this is a really serious and important issue. We will act. The consultation, I think it was right to listen to parents, listen to teachers, listen to experts in the technology sector. Okay. I think it had 70,000 or more responses. It closed yesterday. Okay. We will come forward with proposals and we will act in a serious way.
And then just finally, I just want to talk to you about the heat wave. I don't know if you're someone who kind of loves it, hates it.
I can't believe I'm wearing a jacket.
Yeah, I know, that's brave. That's brave, I have to say. The Conservatives want to scrap regulations that effectively discourage people from, developers from installing aircon in new properties. They introduced it, by the way. I'm going to be very open about this, right? So this isn't an attack on the Labour government. But is that the kind of red tape that is slightly ridiculous when you feel how hot the air is at the minute?
We have to look across the board in our planning system and in our built environment, something I've been passionate about for a long time, at what are the rules and the processes that inhibit people from being able to just get stuff built, from being able to make their lives better. We passed last year our Planning and Infrastructure Act, game-changing for the amount of building and the amount of change that we can have in our country. The Tories opposed it. All of the opposition parties, I remember in the House of Commons, opposed it every single step of the way. I don't know the detail of the specific proposal there, but that sort of thing is the sort of thing that is important for us to look at, to see what changes we can make to make life easier for people up and down the country. Because I tell you, it's very, very warm last night, and there'll be people with their windows open, sleeping on the ground floor. If we can make it easier for people to be able to do the things they want to do with their homes, I think that's really important.
So, at the minute, building regulations require developers to seek out passive cooling methods like windows, shutters and ventilations for new homes before they're allowed to fit aircon. So it feels to me like this is another, 20 pages that they're going to have to fill out, like a planning hurdle as well, right?
Yeah, so that sort of thing I'm instinctively cautious about. At the same time, we do have to make sure that if we're building homes now for the long term, that they're fit for the future, that we're not building them in a way that doesn't support our long-term efforts that we need to make to reduce our energy consumption. And I'm sure, I'm not an expert on building design, but I'm sure some of those methods probably help with those long-term changes that we need to make, and that's probably why the previous government put them in. OK.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to have you on, Dan Tomlinson, speaking there. Coming up, we're going to be talking about deep fakes online, increasingly realistic, how they're being used to scam people.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right. We're going to get in. Right. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, oh my goodness. You weren't affected. You'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Thank you very much. Okay, but listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
That is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. A new and chilling warning about the deepfakes. We're hearing how scammers are deploying sophisticated deepfakes to con even the most wary of adults.
So there's a survey of 500 adults. 7 in 10 failed to identify what was real and what wasn't from a selection of videos. It's hard, right? None of us can do this, no matter how much of an expert you think you are in this. And we are joined now by Catherine Nibbs, who is an expert in online harm, to talk about this. Thanks so much for being with us. How much of an issue are deepfakes?
They are increasing in terms of the ability of people to decipher what it is and whether we would classify it as real. Now, we've lived in a world where technology has changed so much that the idea that we are watching something that might not be true is it's the change that we're going through right now. And of course, every time we give people advice around particular scams, such as the numbers of fingers, one of the things is AI is able to then learn from that, and it will then update its processes in the background, and then it will make sure that in future, for example, that every hand that it produces has 5 fingers.
Clearly, there are versions of AI-generated videos that are accurate and for information purposes, and I guess aren't the examples that cause us such dismay. The other end of the spectrum, there are some absolutely horrendous examples, and there's one quite recently that you wanted to highlight to make the point.
Yes, I would certainly say the crisis of our time is not social media, as it is the topic of the day, if you like, at the moment. I would certainly say, having worked with children who have been exploited online for the last 15, 16 years, the crisis of today is images that can be manipulated into child sexual abuse material. And children's faces are being used to create that data, and that data is then being used to manipulate, to blackmail, and to harass. And if we really, really want to kind of get to grips with this, we need to start focusing on how do we protect children? How do we ensure that their data and information isn't used by these AI systems in order to create those deepfakes, often referred to as synthetic data?
It's just so staggeringly awful, to be honest. It really doesn't thinking about. And I guess it's a warning, right, I guess, to schools, parents, sports clubs about the images that we're all putting on the internet of kids.
Yeah, and it sounds very frightening, and it is. However, we are now in a process where the world has changed, and that is now a fact. This was not a huge issue 5, 6, 7 or 8 years ago when I was first really helping parents and schools understand their digital safeguarding, when I was working with professionals. And sadly, the organisations around the world that remove this material, so this is the Internet Watch Foundation, InHope, NECMEC, these are the organisations that are really rooted in this particular harm. Their figures have increased to the point that it's becoming untenable, unbelievable, and we really need to help parents understand the issues and effects without scaring them. And sadly, we tend to do that quite often when it comes to anything to do with technology. And right now, I would prefer that we protected children from this particular harm. This is the one that can last a lifetime and even beyond. You know, this is my hyper-focus at the moment.
Catherine, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Very important.
You're welcome.
Important story.
Yeah, it really is an important story, isn't it? It's true.
Now, we have a new James Bond, but not in reality.
Not in cinemas.
Continue the discussion about, different from deepfakes, not in cinemas, but on a video game. 007 First Light is out.
So some people are wondering if this is Amazon's kind of soft launch after its 007 takeover, as our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports. A warning, her report does contain flash photography throughout.
The name's Gibson, Patrick Gibson. There's a new James Bond in town, while fans are still waiting to hear who'll take over from Daniel Craig in the films. For the last 5 years, the Irish actor has had to hide the fact it's his voice and physical likeness in the new 007 video game, which he almost managed.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be the one to spill the beans.
Except to moms.
Yes, of course, yeah. All moms have clearance on official secrets.
It's a massive gaming launch, but does this also mark Amazon's soft launching its 007 takeover? While Gibson managed to keep his casting under wraps, his motion capture suit wasn't quite the glamour he'd had in mind.
Seeing yourself, kind of strolling into a big gala wearing a tuxedo when you're really in like a grey sock was a challenge.
For gamers, the release of 007 First Light is a big deal. But look, even if you're not into games, it's worth exploring some of the behind-the-scenes gameplay here, because the concept is a first. It's an origin story game which is clever. It means by creating a standalone Bond gaming universe, for the first time, they're not restricted to what's happening in the films. Of course, there's been a lot of focus on who might be best placed to take over from Daniel Craig in the films, with Amazon confirming auditions are underway. Callum Turner, Harris Dickinson and Jacob Elordi all getting a lot of mentions in the press. But for the first time, what happens here at Pinewood Studios, the spiritual home of the James Bond franchise, isn't the be-all and end-all for Amazon. Yes, almost every 007 has been shot here since the series began, and Denis Villeneuve's cinematic incarnation really has to start shooting here soon, given that it's out in 2028. But the launch of a James Bond video game that's not tied to the narrative of the films is quite telling, because it isn't just the launch of a new video game. It's a stress test for how Bond fits into Amazon's constantly expanding content-making ecosystem.
There's a huge amount of reverence around the IP, and we've been working very closely with MGM turning into Amazon, so it's been a very close collaboration throughout.
In reality, this game was in production way before Amazon struck its deal with the Broccoli family for full creative control of the franchise. But if fans embrace the game, industry insiders believe this could mark the beginning of a new 007 strategy, moving towards a world of interconnected releases, spin-off side characters, as well as more movies. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
I mean, I'm not a gamer, but that looked quite basic. Didn't it? You think that as well? Yeah, I do. It looked like it was one of the games I used to play 25 years ago.
No, I hear you.
I hope the film is a little bit...
Are you excited about the new Bond?
Yeah, big time. Can't wait. And by the way, I'm not against this Amazon purchase of the franchise. Obviously, the proof will be in the pudding. They've got to make amazing content. But they might well... Look what Disney did with buying Marvel and Star Wars. They've juiced the franchises, I think, most traditional fans and new fans would say for the better. So I come in it with an optimistic view, although, let's see.
Who do you want to be the next Bond?
I don't...
It's time to make the pitch. They might be listening.
It's really, yeah.
Our director just said Wilf. He'd be quite good Bond.
I think that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
It's true.
I mean, it's literally like the ultimate dream, isn't it, for any bloke? I've always thought he's never mentioned at all, so I don't think it's going to be him, but Charlie Hunnam would have been great. I thought Henry Cavill would have been great. He's now not expected to be it. Obviously, Idris Elba would have been the best, but he's a bit old. By the way, the Bond in that, on the computer generally, looked very young. So I don't know how young they're going to go. I'm kind of open for it. I think the person will kind of make it their own. I do want it to be a Brit.
Yeah.
Me too. But have you got a front runner?
I am not really a Bond person. So my kind of controversial view is that I hate all the Bond films apart from the Daniel Craig ones. So
because you don't like Bond generally, or you don't like old movies? You like new movies?
No, I just don't really like Bond generally. Yeah, I think it's a bit too cheesy for me. Previous
cheesy.
Bonds.
So good.
Yeah, I know. I'm not the target audience.
Roger Moore's a bit cheesy, but also I love each to their own. As well. They've been very different types down the years.
Yeah, there you go. Constantly reinvented.
But yeah, don't screw it up, Amazon. You have a great responsibility. One of the great responsibilities of our time.
Get Wilf on.
But I also hope they get on with it. I want to see the next one. It took them long enough to make that computer game. I hope the film doesn't take quite so long. Anyway, back to the news. The energy price cap is rising by 13%, just over £300 to £1,862. That's the average bill for the average household on a yearly basis, and it will rise to that level in July. Tim Jarvis, the Chief Executive of the energy regulator, Ofgem, is here. Tim, thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you with us. So, before we get to how the calculation changes going forward, 1,641 rising to 1,862, about a 13% increase, £300 increase. For obvious reasons, I guess, that the core commodity prices have risen of late because of the war.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, this is being entirely driven by the rise in the international price of gas, which has obviously been affected significantly by the events in the Middle East, and it is that's sort of filtering through into our prices today, into the price cap. I mean, I would say that this is the price cap. There are still around 4 in 10 households are on fixed contracts, so they'll be unaffected by today's announcement at the moment. But clearly, we are now starting to see pressure on bills from the events in the Middle East.
I'm interested how it's risen by this percentage amount, 13%, when clearly, commodity prices have almost doubled, depending on which metric you look at. It's not going to be easy for people. £300 is a massive increase. But could it have been worse?
Yes, it could have been, and we've seen a difference in this price cap in terms of the effect on gas versus the effect on electricity. The effect on gas is much more significant. It's the electricity price has risen by around 5%. I mean, it is still very uncertain and volatile, and the impact on prices over time is very hard to predict. But we're certainly not in the place we were, for example, after the Russia-Ukraine war, where we saw significantly higher prices. We're around roughly the amount that we were paying about this time last year. It's just that normally you would expect that to be coming down as we enter the summer months as demand falls. But we've got that upward pressure on prices now.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, the July quarter is not typically the most expensive quarter for households. If commodity prices persisted where they are for, the rest of the summer, would we see quite a brutal increase for the final quarter of the year, the winter quarter?
So I think if we don't see, I mean, the prices are very volatile. They're going up and down on a daily basis. But I think if we see the sort of the broad trend that we've seen, that is going to lead to a prolonged period of higher prices, I would say. So it's hard to say that there will be higher still, but I think we are not going to see them come down unless there is some significant changes to what's happening in the Middle East. And even then, it will take time for the market to adjust.
So far we've been talking about the like-for-like increase of 13%, but moving forward you're proposing changing the way you calculate the average household usage, and this is good news. We're using less energy.
We are, yes. This has been a trend that's been in place for some time now, probably since the Russia-Ukraine war, where I think people's habits changed, I think, at that time when prices were very high. We've also had some very mild winters over the last couple of years. So that has seen gas usage fall quite a lot, by around 17%. And electricity usage is also changing on average as well. And that's probably a reflection of the fact that the appliances that we're using in our homes are becoming more and more efficient over time.
Just finally, how much more efficiency is there for homes to find, kind of in a world of sort of relatively easy finds versus the really kind of egregious energy efficiency pushes?
Well, I think this is certainly where, as we head into the winter months, anything that people can do to make their houses and the places that they live less drafty and to insulate their homes will make a huge difference. And this is where I think that the government's has got its warm homes plan and is looking to see how it can support households to make that change, because that's what will really drive down the heating costs in the winter.
Tim Jarvis, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at the weather next.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
The southwest will hang on to the heat today, but eastern parts will be cooler with a wind off the North Sea. It'll be dry this morning, bar the odd shower over southern Britain. Most places can expect plenty of sunshine, but eastern Scotland and northeastern England look rather dull. It'll turn out very warm again for many, especially in the southwest. But eastern parts will be much cooler than recently, with near average temperatures in the grey northeast. Central England and Wales can expect a few thunderstorms later, while the northeast will see sunny spells developing inland.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Sometimes it feels like you can see anything on social media, but the thing we'll talk about next is the controversial shadow banning of women's health issues. So, for example, menstruation, menopause, breastfeeding. These are the most controversial things in social media land. We'll be talking about next.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw two guys, two bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. So social media firms are being accused of hiding content about women's health from their platforms. It's known as shadow banning, where sites like Instagram, Facebook remove content about periods, about sexual health incorrectly, deeming it as adult content. So we're joined now by Debbie Thomas from Essity, which is a leading company in women's health and hygiene. So what's going on then?
Morning. Yes, we're finding that women are increasingly turning to online digital platforms looking for information to help them find out about medical conditions, particularly around women's health. And as they're looking for this information, a lot of it is actually not there for them to find because the content, in fact, contains medically correct and anatomically correct wording. And we're finding that even our own brands, which you may recognise, such as Bodyform, Tenor, Isviva and Modibody, our own Bodyform brand has actually experienced this itself. So we've actually experienced the shadow banning ourselves, where information that we've put out has actually been quietly removed from view. So actually it can't be accessed.
So what you're saying is that there's certain words that I guess act as kind of red flags. So vagina, breasts, whatever it is. And then that content is what, completely taken down?
It's hidden in the background. So quite often the person who's posting it doesn't even realise that it's no longer there. So you continue to engage with the platform, you continue to put information online, but actually no, people can't see it. It's just hidden. You don't even get notification that it's happened to you.
So what do you think should happen? Because obviously, I guess this comes from a place of trying to protect particularly kids from content that might be not appropriate for them. What needs to change?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So we've been campaigning on this for some time, and we've been very lucky to have the support of Emily Darlington MP, who actually called a backbench debate last week about this very subject. And at the debate, a number of MPs attended who all supported this issue. First and foremost, it's about letting people know that this issue actually happens, because a lot of people don't realise it. From the backbench debate, we would like support from the government to bring to the table tech companies who can help us find a workable solution that keeps women and girls safe whilst they're online and looking for content that helps them, but actually finds a solution that enables women to find information that helps them to understand about content.
Because I couldn't agree more on the need to be able to talk openly about these things. And one of the things I think we have made strides with women's health is being able to talk about this stuff openly, which didn't happen before. But I can also understand, like if you've got some social media platforms, they're almost pornography sites. And so there has to be a way, I guess, of what is a breastfeeding picture and what is an inappropriate content picture. And I guess you're saying that you don't really know the solution, but you just want there to be a debate about it. Is that the current position?
That's exactly it. And exactly as you say, currently content around periods, breastfeeding, endometriosis, common women's health issues are actually being put in the same bucket as some of those, some of the content that actually is harmful and is dangerous to other women. And we're saying that actually just because something uses an anatomically or medically correct word, it doesn't mean that it's sexual content. Our own content was actually removed was blocked 22 times in 1 month, and Meta deemed that it should have an 18+ warning on it when it was about periods. And women need to know about this issue.
It's really interesting to talk. Big issue. Thank you very much for being on the programme today.
Thank you.
As we wrap up the hour, 2 more companies crossed $1 trillion in value yesterday.
Which ones?
SK Hynix and Micron.
Right.
Wouldn't have guessed that. So these are memory companies, and they have surged of late, rising multiple times in the last couple of months and last couple of trading days in particular. And, it's leading to a lot of people to worry, is this, sustainable? Almost certainly not. And are people going to get over their skis on this? But it's just interesting to see the way that the broad AI trade is driving so much at the moment. SK Hynix is obviously in Korea and Micron in the US. And we now have 14 companies, I was just checking this, that are worth more than $1 trillion.
Wow.
NVIDIA is the biggest quite comfortably. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, companies that a lot of people have heard from. But in the last month or so, you're starting to see some more of the pure play semiconductor memory chip companies join that. So TSMC, Broadcom, Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron, as I said. So it's really broadening out.
And also, to state the obvious, it just shows the dominance of tech companies as well, right? This is where all the money is.
And one's directly with an exposure to AI in particular. But the pace of this increase is worrying. So the Korean stock index, all of the companies in Korea, has now risen 100% this year.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
And that doesn't feel sustainable. We're out of time. This hour, we'll be right back with much more, including a reaction to Tony Blair's comments and the rise in the energy price cap.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Richard Frost.
With Sophie Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
The energy price cap jumps over £200 amid warnings the Iran war will further push winter bills upwards.
A warning from Tony Blair that Labour is lurching to the left and should focus on future-proofing the UK rather than engaging in leadership dramas.
A fifth child has died after getting into trouble swimming in a river with friends as the heatwave hits record temperatures.
Also today, we're talking about prescription drugs and how some could be causing us more harm than good.
And we'll also be looking at how illegal casinos are still able to target children to bet real money on gaming platform Roblox.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. We kick off with the energy price cap, and the average price that people will be paying for their energy bills has risen. It's risen by about £200 or by about 13%. So for the quarter, the 3 months that began in April, the number was £1,641. For the quarter, for the 3 months that begin in July, it will rise, as I said, by around £200 or 13% to £1,862. Again, this is a guide price for the average household. If you're a very heavy energy user, it'll be more than that. If you're very efficient, it'll be a bit less than that. And I think a really key point to focus on, £200 increase, 13% increase will be tough for what is most people's biggest energy bill, but it isn't as big as the increases that we did see during Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which you can, of course, see here. And that is perhaps a little bit surprising for people, given, of course, how much we've seen the raw commodity prices increase during the course of the Iran war, which is the biggest driver, of course, for this increase. We've seen raw commodity prices double in some cases, but we're not seeing the scale of increase that we saw then. By the way, back then, the peak would have been £4,000, but the energy price guarantee came in October 2022 and capped things at £2,500, which was the most of what most people had to pay during that period. It's increased, not quite by that much, 1,862, but still a big increase for people to take. Worth noting as well, a big increase particularly between the April and July quarters. July usually the lowest energy-intensive quarter because of the summer months, of course. Now, I just want to show you one other chart because there's some other nuances. You might see some slightly lower numbers coming out today, which is that Ofgem is changing the way they calculate the average household going forward. So, in fact, moving forward, you start to see the number 1,663 based on new calculations. But in order to compare it like for like, we used the previous chart and things have gone up 13%. But going forward, they're changing what they use as the guide, the average household, because in fact, as consumers, we're using less energy, which is a good thing going forward. We're now using 7% less electricity, 17% less gas. So you might see this number out there today as well, 1,663. But in fact, comparing it on the prior format for calculations to the current format for calculations, it has increased by 13% to 1,862.
To politics now. Tony Blair, Labour's most successful ever leader. He took the party to 3 successive election victories, and he's warning today Labour is playing with fire over the potential leadership contest that it's got up and running.
His main claim is that Labour risks retreating to its comfort zone on the left, prioritising a growing welfare state and failing to prepare the UK for rapidly evolving technology.
So it's a 5,000-word essay. In it, he says, governments that succeed don't start with a personality contest or a political question. How do we save the country from reform? They start with an idea, a project, a governing purpose, an analysis of what is wrong and a plan to put it right. He goes on to say the best political space from which this can be achieved is what I call the radical centre. The centre, properly defined, is where you put policy first and politics last. So you begin with the question, what is the right answer? And only once you have that do you engage in the political task of persuading people of it. Britain is in a mess precisely because in recent years it has done the opposite. So he's talking about policy, What policies is he putting forward? Let's just jump up and show you some of the things that he is proposing in this essay to avoid the UK being relegated from the Premier League of Nations. So this is the big one, really. He's talking about removing obstacles to growth. The problem is a lot of those obstacles, he says, were put in place by Keir Starmer's government. So the rise to the minimum wage, the Employment Rights Bill, increasing national insurance for employers, just a few of them. He also talks about bringing down energy prices. So he will say a reversal of the current North Sea oil policy when it comes to new oil and gas licences being banned. He's been talking about artificial intelligence for a while now, and no surprise, it's something he really focuses in on this essay as well. And finally, this one might come as a surprise to you. We've got EU relations on the screen, and I bet if I asked you about, what do you think Tony Blair's saying when it comes to the EU, you'd be like, well, rejoining. Well, he's not. He's actually saying that reversing Brexit isn't the answer. So a lot to chew over, I think, from this essay from Tony Blair.
Which is the other, so many things to come out of it. And Rob's joined us around the desk to discuss it, but the extent to which those that don't agree with him in the Labour Party will sort of see it as a positive, because he's not as popular as you might expect for being their most successful election winner of all time. Yeah. Amongst party base today, or not?
Yeah, I mean, among a lot of the membership, I think they'll probably sort of politely...
or not politely.
Suggest, or maybe unpolitely, as they already have, suggest that Tony Blair butts out. I mean, it's no surprise, given that the whole kind of framing of this essay is let's talk less about personality and more about policies, that, he doesn't explicitly say Keir Starmer should go, this person should come in. But I think, reading all of it, it is a dismantling of where the Labour government is at the moment. He basically just believes that the current Labour government isn't up to the task, the really difficult challenges being faced internationally and domestically. He talks a lot about AI, that Labour is just in its comfort zone. He terms it as, not old Labour, not new Labour, not blue Labour, but just Labour. Mm-hmm. So he just thinks it's just not good enough, essentially. But you also get a sense that in terms of the leadership campaign and how it's stacking up, he doesn't think that the sort of quality of debate so far is stacking up well there as well. He kind of characterises Wed Streeting as someone trying to style himself as a moderniser who thinks that means going back into the EU, and then rather dismissively talks about Andy Burnham as moving further left on taxes and spending, and spinning it with a rehash of the far-left critique of nothing good coming out of the last 40 years. So, he doesn't sound like he has a lot of confidence in where the government is, but he doesn't particularly sound like he's got a lot of confidence in where it could be going either. It's
really interesting, because I think a lot of this is framed as, policy first rather than personality. I think it's more nuanced than that. And I read this last hour, but he says you've got to put policy first, politics last. You begin with the question, what's the right answer? Only once you have that do you engage in the political task of persuading people of it. Britain's in a mess precisely because in recent years it's done the opposite. And I think that's a sort of very understandable point to say, focus on long-term what helps the nation. Even if it's difficult, set out that as your policy and then try and bring people along with you. And I do think when you see the number of U-turns that we've had of late, it is a bit of an embodiment of doing what's easy, what's popular, even if you literally yourselves have set out a different position initially, and then you kind of welfare is the key example of that, I think, where you kind of U-turn on it because politically you don't have the votes, rather than sticking to your initial guns on what you thought was best for the country. Yeah, and I think the sort of what you've seen in the current government is one's eaten the other, right? Because you don't have the stable policy platform, it destroys the politics, because all of the U-turns just eat up any political capital you've got. I mean, if you were to sort of level some criticisms at the piece, maybe one is that... Bit long. Is it...
How long we got?
5,000 words.
5,600 words. Tony. Yeah. Is it stuck in the past too much that it underestimates the importance of personality in a way that, yes, you need the policy to actually make people feel better in their lives, but actually maybe having someone that can sell that is more important now than it was back in Tony Blair's day? Again, on sort of being stuck in the past, there's a really interesting passage on the US where he basically says he doesn't believe that this is a rupture with the US. He sort of says the kind of Mark Carney advanced notion of basically having to think of a world without the US being in its traditional place. He doesn't buy that. He thinks it's more a reckoning than a rupture, that the US it's always been an unequal partnership, which is intriguing given his dealings with the US. But he said other American presidents have been too polite to say so. This one isn't. It is essentially America, and Trump is basically just calling on the UK to be a better partner. And that means spending more on defence, he says, because our fundamental geopolitical objectives in terms of China, in terms of Russia, in terms of Iran, they're the same as they always were. Again, a criticism of that could be, does that underestimate the change that is going on in American politics at the moment and the impact that is having geopolitically? And then the final one I'd say is that, people coming up with possible manifestos and leadership platforms right now might go, whoa, Tony, we haven't even got a leadership challenge yet, and you're already having a go at the sort of lack of quality of debate. That may come over time, but I think reading this, you can be clear that what he doesn't want is a sort of rush into a very quick change in leadership. Clearly, he wants a bit of a sustained period where actually these ideas can be thrown about.
Yeah, he's almost like looking at everyone on all sides and being like, right, guys, step up, because this is a mess. Rob, thanks very much. Good to have you, as always.
We're going to continue the discussion on this. We'll be joined by Labour's former Director of Comms and Strategy, Tom Baldwin, of course, Keir Starmer's biographer and friend as well. That'll be coming up at 8:15, shortly.
Now, fifth child has died from drowning after going swimming in open water as the heatwave peaked yesterday. Just really, really tragic. It's
believed to be a 12-year-old boy who was swimming in a river at Ribchester in Lancashire. Oliver's here with more on this sad development, not the only one, of course.
Yeah, not the only one, but Lancashire police saying that they recovered the body of this 12-year-old boy from the River Ribble yesterday following an extensive search by its underwater search officers along with the fire service and the ambulance service. It means that the total number of young people who've died from entering bodies of water during this heatwave in the UK is 5. Over in the Republic of Ireland, there was also one 15-year-old girl who also died. Although the temperatures have peaked in England, setting new highs at 35.1 degrees, in Wales at 32.9 degrees, it takes time for the water to heat up. And so we've had a relatively cold winter. It takes that time for the water to heat up. And the RNLI saying that there's a real risk you can get cold water shock if you enter the water too quickly and you're not used to it. Yes, people go cold water swimming, but if you aren't used to this, it can take your breath away, it seize up your muscles. And then we've seen just how lethal it can be.
You see, this is such an important point, isn't it? Because look, even if you're a strong swimmer and you're looking at this river and you're thinking, this is no issue, I can easily swim in this, the cold water is the thing that can make it very dangerous.
Yeah, and the National Fire Chiefs Council, because quite often it's fire brigades that have got to go and help with these search and rescue operations, they're urging families to have conversations with young people to warn them about the dangers of unsupervised swimming in places like reservoir, lakes, canals, quarries, all of those places where it looks like the water might be shallow, it might be warming up, it's really still quite cold. Away from the dangers of the water, there's also having an impact, the heat wave, on East Midlands Ambulance Service. So we've seen there that they've had to sort of bring in a business continuity programme because of the excess calls that they're getting. So good news, hot weather is leaving us, if you're not a fan of the sun, but there's still a few days ahead where it could be reaching above 27, 28 degrees.
Yeah, please do be careful. Oliver, great stuff, thank you. It's been more than a year since Sky News revealed children using the gaming platform Roblox were being lured into gambling by illegal online casinos. Both Roblox and the Gambling Commission said they were taking action.
But our latest investigation shows it's very much still happening, even when people are openly saying that they're underage. Our science and technology reporter Mickey Carroll has a story.
Roblox prides itself on letting children be anything they can imagine. Well, over a year ago, we reported that illegal casinos were targeting the game's young users and letting them gamble. Some of these children were betting hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of Roblox money. And Roblox told us at the time it was taking numerous steps to shut the casinos down. But when we checked in on how that was going, we found this. A plethora of casinos, some old, some new, all luring young Roblox users into gambling. On the chat rooms linked to the casinos, users openly admit they're underage, but their accounts remain active. Some are just 13 years old. These casinos advertise to Roblox users on social media and then ask them to log into the casino with their Roblox credentials. From that point on, they can gamble with their Roblox currency, which is bought using real money. Some casinos allow users to withdraw any winnings as Roblox items, others will let them be withdrawn as cryptocurrency. This isn't necessarily new. We found similar problems the last time we investigated, and that's exactly the issue. It seems that nothing has changed.
The fact that nothing's changed, I think I blame the unlicensed casinos, obviously, should shoulder the clear blame. But they're going to act in this way. So really what's more surprising and more saddening is that our statutory regulator, the Gambling Commission, hasn't done more to stop them. I think Roblox also has to shoulder some of the blame in this instance because it's providing what's effectively a cryptocurrency and allowing it to be used elsewhere outside of its website and not taking serious enough action to protect its customers, who are largely young people.
Roblox hasn't responded to our request for comment, but sources at the company told me it's playing whack-a-mole with these casinos, which are actually pretty bad for its reputation. It wants more support from regulators and law enforcement because it says while it can control what happens on its platform, it can't control what happens away from it. For the people campaigning to stop this kind of illegal activity, it's a familiar problem, and one that seems to be intensifying.
It's become quite commonplace amongst children, 7 years and upwards, to actually now be gambling in that sense, and that is mad.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says these casinos target children because then they can create lifelong habits.
If you get children used to gambling their cash, then all that happens is it gets worse in later life.
The Gambling Commission told us they'd been in touch with Roblox about the casinos we found. The Commission's spokesperson said criminals running unlicensed websites are unscrupulous. They simply don't care about offering gambling to children or vulnerable adults. This is why we take reports of illegal sites extremely seriously and are already taking action against those flagged by Sky News. Right now, the people trying to stop these casinos are playing whack-a-mole. The problem is, while they're trying to catch up, it's children that are being harmed. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Well, following that investigation, one of the casinos you saw there, Rollbet, has shut down to users. Another, Blocks Flip, has banned UK users from its site. So Rollbet warned its users to withdraw any money from their accounts before it closed, saying it was shutting due to operational constraints, ethical concerns, management challenges and staff personal reasons.
We're going to pivot back to one of the top stories of the day. Tony Blair has written a 5,000-word essay, and in it he wants Labour to embrace what he calls the radical centre and put policy ahead of politics. We're joined now by Labour's former Director of Communications and Strategy, Tom Boardman. Very good morning to you.
Hello.
How much of this is helpful? How much of it isn't helpful for the Labour Party and for the Prime Minister?
I don't think Tony Blair really sort of thinks along those lines. He's now up in the clouds thinking about big geopolitical things, and I'm not sure he's thinking, how can I help this government or disrupt this government? He's frustrated that politics is not about what he used to call the big picture. And I think he's right that, we spend far too much on this sort of froth rather than the substance. I don't think when people look back in the history of this government, I think the biggest problem was Keir Starmer taking some glasses and some suits to smarten himself up for the election, or appointing an ambassador to the United States, who people didn't like. I think they're going to say, how is it you address these big, towering challenges of this time? Now, where I disagree with Tony Blair is how well the government's done in addressing those challenges, or indeed some of what those challenges are. But, part of him is, what he's saying is, I think he's got a really good point, that we should actually be talking about these big things rather than quite trivial matters, because that's not how we'll be judged by history.
I guess, because look, I think it's interesting that you agree with some of it, not with some of it. What would you say to the assertion, I guess, the insinuation from Tony Blair that Keir Starmer just needs to be more bold, a purpose for the government? Because it does feel like there's been some things that he's U-turned on, right? He came in saying he needs to reform welfare, then shied away from it. He's talked about, planning, and yet home building has been pretty disappointing if you look at the last year, right?
Yeah, one of the things that Tony Blair praises about his government is planning deregulation. And this government would say it is reforming welfare. It's just having a second stab at it. I'm not sure that. The trouble is he sets up these two big challenges: AI, how we respond to AI, and how we adapt to the sort of changing geopolitical order with the rise of China and so on. The problem is that some people would disagree with him about the right way to respond to that. In this essay, and it's a very long essay, and to do it credit, he has a go at everyone from Keir Starmer to Wes Streeting to Andy Burnham, Remainers, Leavers, Reform, the Green Party, the Tories and the Lib Dems somewhere, right? Literally everyone else has criticised. Gordon Brown's mentioned somewhere, right? It's a very long essay. He's right to talk about these big challenges, but when he talks about the change in geopolitical order, that we have to stay close to the United States, that's an opinion. Keir Starmer disagrees. Keir Starmer didn't want to, endorse Donald Trump's war with Iran, and I think he took the right decision on that. Tony Blair thinks he got that wrong. No, that's an argument.
He hasn't broken from the States, though, has he? He spent a lot of the time, cozying up to Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's a nuance, right? So Keir Starmer recognises we have a security interest with the United States. That doesn't mean going along with everything it does, including an illegal war with Iran. Now, so I think just because Tony Blair's got this big picture, it doesn't mean he's right about everything he says in the big picture. I was looking at a speech he made in 2007. Just before he stopped being Prime Minister. And he said every generation of leaders faces these towering challenges of our time. The biggest threat to humanity, he said, is climate change. And he brought in the Climate Change Act. He started the Climate Change Act, which would take us towards net zero. Now, he's saying dump net zero. We should be consuming more fossil fuels. That's an opinion. That's an opinion.
He doesn't say dump net zero. And obviously, since 2007, we've made huge progress on our carbon emissions. So it's a sort of different context. I wanted to bring it onto economic policy, because I think this passage is really interesting, both on the policy, but also the implied praise. You said he criticised basically everyone, which I agree with. Apart from one person, this is really interesting. He said the government's measures, such as new workers' rights laws, the net zero acceleration, phasing out of British oil and gas industry, the uplift in the minimum wage beyond inflation, and the non-dom change-ins have given headwinds, not tailwinds, to British business, despite the macroeconomic gains for which the Chancellor is rightly praised. That was very interesting, wasn't it? Very clear on the policy, but also suggesting that the Chancellor might have been against some of those policies.
I think Chancellor has remained very focused on growth, and I think one of the sort of misapprehensions about this government, which Keir Starmer and others are slightly responsible for, is saying that growth was the only priority it had. There are other priorities, including trying to make the country a fairer place with workers' rights and renters' rights and things like that. And, the Chancellor rightly is focused on her mission, which is growth. So I'm not sure there's a sort of, I'm not sure he's trying to identify some split between the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. And I think if Tony Blair was here, he'd probably say that's the kind of froth of political debate rather than the big substance of, geopolitical decision-making.
But on the economic policy, he's clear that it shouldn't continue to move to the left from here.
Yeah, look, Tony, we know who Tony Blair is. He's a big political thinker, but he's also a centre, sometimes even centre-right politician when it comes to economics, I think. And he doesn't like left-wing economics. He doesn't like, what he sees as the drift to the left. And in that sense, he's not actually doing a big picture. He's actually sort of speaking almost sort of factionally that, this drift to the left is going to be bad for the Labour Party, he says. We don't win elections like that. That's not the big picture of geopolitics. That's how Labour win elections. And he's got a particular view on that. A lot of people would disagree.
Can I ask you, kind of just to zoom away from Tony Blair for a minute? Because you obviously, you've written books about Keir Starmer, you're close to him, you know the guy very well. And we are in this kind of slightly extraordinary situation in Westminster at the minute, where we have this kind of by-election that is seemingly like a kind of stalking horse candidate to try and get rid of the Prime Minister and have a leadership contest. It is all... I can't remember anything like it, to be honest. How is Keir Starmer?
Really frustrated. He feels that they're beginning to show some real delivery, whether it's, better growth figures, plummeting immigration, the biggest fall in NHS waiting list for 17 years. In other circumstances, he thinks everyone would be talking about the scandals afflicting Nigel Farage or Zach Palensky. Instead of that, they're talking about how long he's got on Downing Street and potential successors. And that's, just at the point where he's beginning to get delivery and get, and a better grip on his opponents, we're back into this introspection with the Labour Party. And I mean, to go back to Tony Blair, he's bang on when he says the idea of the sort of swipe right for a new Prime Minister, this political culture we've got, that, he's not charismatic enough, so let's try another one. That's not going to solve Britain's long-term problems.
Is it your sense that any leadership contest, no matter who's a candidate, Keir Starmer will want to be on the ballot paper?
I don't know, and I'm not sure he knows. A lot hangs on what happens in Makerfield, not just wherever Andy Burnham wins, but how he wins. What happens then in a Manchester mayoral contest? What's happening in the rest of politics? What's happening in the rest of the world? So I think the best advice to Keir Starmer is just wait and see. I don't think he sort of wants to cling on forever simply out of sort of vanity. He's not in it for that. He does have this sense of duty to the country in a really dangerous time for the world, in a dangerous time for our economy, not to inflict more turmoil and chaos in it. And I think from Andy Burnham's perspective, he needs to build a team. He needs to build a policy programme that goes beyond sort of Manchesterism. He needs to build a foreign policy programme. He needs to start thinking about some of these big challenges that Tony Blair's talking about. And I think Andy Burnham would benefit from a bit more time. And the Labour Party would benefit from a bit more time to calm down and think about the direction it wants to take, rather than throw itself into more froth and frenzy, which makes for great TV, but doesn't make for great government.
Should Keir Starmer go and campaign in Makerfield?
I think it'd be cute and it'd be very funny and the media would love it. But Prime Ministers don't often go and campaign in by-elections. I think it'd just be a sort of distraction from what Keir Starmer wants to do is get on with government. Feeding a media story about him and his potential successors isn't getting on with government.
It's not just a media story.
It's
no.
It's a story.
It is a story, but I think it would be indulging you lot in the media quite a lot.
We know you love us really, Tom, despite all the appearances. Thanks. Always good to have you on the programme.
Here, by the way, is the list of all the candidates for the 18th of June in Makerfield. Of course, a few weeks away now, that by-election. Blimey, it's quite a lot of candidates. It's expanded quickly, that list,
in the
last couple of days. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about potential social media ban.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away. Thank you very much.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mandani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. Campaigners met the Prime Minister to discuss a potential ban on social media for under-16s yesterday. A government consultation on restrictions for children has now closed.
We actually spoke to the Treasury Minister, Dan Tomlinson, about this in the last hour.
So we definitely can't just think around the edges. This is a really serious issue affecting millions of young people growing up in this country. You know, I have a little 2-year-old. My plan is just not to put him anywhere near a smartphone until he's 16. We'll see where I can withstand that. But this is a really serious and important issue. We will act. The consultation, I think it was right to listen to parents, listen to teachers, listen to experts in the technology sector. Okay. I think it had 70,000 or more responses. It closed yesterday. Okay. We will come forward with proposals and we will act in a serious way.
We're joined now by Mariano Janin, the father of Mia, who took her own life after she was bullied at school. It's every parent's worst nightmare, and I just want to say thank you so much for, I don't know how you had the strength, really, to be honest, to sit here with us, and we're very, very sorry about what happened to...
Thank you for having us or having me, and yeah, it is the parents' worst nightmare.
Just take your time, obviously, but just talk to us about what happened to Mia.
Well, Mia, everything happens the first day after the second lockdown. And she went to school and she was bullied physically at school, and the night after she was bullied on social media badly. Mia was happy to return to school, happy to return to her life again. Drama, cheerleading, school, trip to Greece. And suddenly this happened, and for me and my wife, that was changed our life.
We talk a lot about social media and the impact on young people, but I think one thing we don't talk about enough, actually, is how it links in with bullying at school. Because it feels like, if you're having a rough time at school, coming home used to be an escape.
A safe place.
A safe place.
Not anymore.
And that's because, I guess, phones and social media, they're constantly be able to be contacted.
Yeah, listen, it's a difficult situation even for parents to monitoring the phone. You cannot monitor the phone of your daughter for 24/7. Yeah. It's impossible. And we always thought before this happened to us, internet is safe. There's an IP. So if something happened, we have somebody to ask for help. That's not true.
So you met with the Prime Minister yesterday?
Yes.
Tell us about...
It was a good meeting. He understands our point very well. And I think we present a demand of 4 points, no negotiables, no pick and mix. And I think he agreed with us that we need to do something. But we need to see now the result of this consultation, that for me, it was not necessary. We have all the medical proofs and all the, the data that say that it's harmful.
What are the 4 points?
To raise the age limit to 16, this is the first point, unless companies can show us that they are safe by design rather than addicted by design and harmful by default. This is the first point. The second one is to ensure that school fully implement phone-free policies. And removal of the out-of-sight option from statutory guidance and funding for school for fully implement phone-free policies. The other point, and this is very important as well, is the review of Ofcom. We are not happy with the way that Ofcom deals in the last, in my case, 4 years with the case, and we would like to have a new body that it's led by someone trusted by the bereaved parents. Unfortunately, we know a lot about the whole subject because we've been from, And the last one is the introduction of an e-safety commissioner. This position will have oversight of tech companies and online safety regulation, and probably then we will talk about the task force that help police to investigate all this.
You have been face-to-face with Keir Starmer, right, talking to him about this. And I think that people like me and Wilf are always trying to work out what his position is on this, because it's not really clear to me, I'll be honest, which way he is going to go. What's your sense after talking to him?
It was a good meeting. It was very well organised, and he listened to us. My personal feeling is I was expecting the consultation finish last midnight, so today about 8 hours ago. And I was expecting to see the result of the new right now.
So it's like, come on, where is it?
Unfortunately, the factor of the time on this subject, it's detrimental because every time it's, okay, we need a consultation and it's in 12 weeks, and then we need 6 weeks to review the consultation. And the price is young life. It's we have a new member. Our group is growing. We don't want the group to grow. And it's growing big time.
So if you have a closing message to the Prime Minister, to the government, what is it?
Well, we have our meeting yesterday. I would like to start to see the implementation of the solution. Or frankly say, no, we are not doing this.
Thank you so much for being on the programme.
You're welcome.
It's been great to talk to you, and our hats go off to you and the other families who've been so brave in fighting this fight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hear, hear. Mariano Janine, father of Mia Janine, joining us there. Now, moving on, could the way some of us take prescription drugs be doing more harm than good?
And that's a question being posed by our next guest. Joining us now is the pharmacist, Dr. Nick Barber, who wrote a book called How to Take Drugs. Not all drugs, probably, right?
Well, legal ones.
Only the legal ones.
I wondered, reading this, whether it should have been titled How Not to Take Drugs. Is that the sort of big takeaway? We get prescribed and then take medication, chemicals far too much?
That's right. I mean, drugs have made great breakthroughs. I take drugs. Nobody should think I'm saying don't take drugs, but I'm saying they're not quite what we expect. They cost a great deal of money. About 1 in 5 admissions into hospital from A&E is due to side effects of drugs. But most of all, they're not as effective as we think they are. And that's been the big sort of secret, if you like. So there's a big study of the 10 biggest selling drugs in the USA. The most effective only worked for 1 out of 4 people who took it, and the least effective were less than 1 in 10 people. So I think it means you've got a different sort of relationship with them when you think about that, isn't it? They're not necessarily going to give you a great boost in health.
What drugs are we talking about here, right? Because it feels like there's there's basically illegal drugs, right? There are drugs that you get told to take by your GP or your doctor. And then there's other sort of wellness drugs. So what drugs are we talking about here?
Right, so we're talking broadly about prescription drugs here, which you'll get through from your doctor. So the drug is the active constituent, and a medicine is the thing which has a drug inside it. So aspirin is a drug, aspirin tablets are a medicine. So it's the medicines which you're getting from your pharmacist.
So that could be for stuff like anxiety or depression or whatever, or pain relief as well.
Yes, but also for statins. 7 million people are on statins to lower their cholesterol, blood pressure, drugs for type 2 diabetes, all sorts of things like this.
I guess my main question on this is, presumably your advice, if your doctor prescribes you something, you should trust that and take it?
I say there's a negotiation, first of all, with the doctor. I think there's an expectation. Doctors think patients want to be given a drug, and patients think doctors want to give them a drug. But actually, both sides are open to have a bit of a discussion in the middle. And I say, when you see your GP, you get a diagnosis, your option, you should say, what are my options? What if I do nothing? If I just leave this? My cholesterol's a bit high, but otherwise I'm healthy. Does it really matter? What are the alternatives? Could I do exercise? Could I do, use, for sleep, could I use yoga nidras? Could I use CBT, which may be online and so on? And then finally, what would be the benefits and risks of taking a drug?
But I guess then I frame the question differently. If a doctor still concludes you should take something, I mean, I know you're a doctor as well, so different doctors have different views on this, but the end of the hat is you should take this prescription. Presumably you should take it.
Well, if you're happy with the discussion beforehand, then yes, then you try it. But you've got no idea what's going to happen when you try it, because it may not work. You may get side effects. You may find you don't like the taste, or you can't use it if it's some sort of actuator or things. So that's why there's a need for a role there, which there is in the NHS, called the New Medicine Service, which is based on about 15 years of my research, where somebody says, how are you getting on with this medicine? Does it seem to be working for you? So when the doctor's making that decision, it's made under great uncertainty as to what's going to happen in the future. And this is about honing down to make sure that if you want to take it and it's likely to work, then that's what you can do.
Yeah, which I think that's the sort of normal course of business. I guess the broader point I think, which is very understandable, is there needs to be perhaps a greater national conversation that chemicals aren't always the solution, and we shouldn't have wildly high hopes that they'll deliver a magic wand from it. I guess I was getting to the point that even in light of that, if you're prescribed something, you shouldn't necessarily just ignore that.
No, and I think that if you just prescribed it, as one person told me, I was told, you're going to be on a statin for the rest of your life. You don't need to know why, just go and take it. That's the extreme where, that was very poor prescribing. But if people have been engaged with a discussion and they know that there's a chance to renegotiate it with a yearly review of medicines or whatever, then they can begin to have more control and think about what they're doing and whether they're comfortable with that. And some people like drugs, some people don't.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Nick Barber, really interesting. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Good to see you.
Now, we have a new James Bond. Not in cinemas, don't get too excited. In the video game, 007 First Light.
Many are wondering if this is Amazon's soft launch after its 007 takeover. As our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports, a warning her report contains flash photography.
The name's Gibson, Patrick Gibson. There's a new James Bond in town, while fans are still waiting to hear who'll take over from Daniel Craig in the films. For the last 5 years, the Irish actor has had to hide the fact it's his voice and physical likeness in the new 007 video game, which he almost managed.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be the one to spill the beans.
Except to moms.
Yes, of course, yeah. All moms have clearance on official secrets.
It's a massive gaming launch, but does this also mark Amazon's soft launching its 007 takeover? While Gibson managed to keep his casting under wraps, his motion capture suit wasn't quite the glamour he'd had in mind.
Seeing yourself, kind of strolling into a big gala wearing a tuxedo when you're really in like a grey sock was a challenge.
For gamers, the release of 007 First Light is a big deal. But look, even if you're not into games, it's worth exploring some of the behind-the-scenes gameplay here, because the concept is a first. It's an origin story game which is clever. It means by creating a standalone Bond gaming universe, for the first time, they're not restricted to what's happening in the films. Of course, there's been a lot of focus on who might be best placed to take over from Daniel Craig in the films, with Amazon confirming auditions are underway. Callum Turner, Harris Dickinson and Jacob Elordi all getting a lot of mentions in the press. But for the first time, what happens here at Pinewood Studios, the spiritual home of the James Bond franchise, isn't the be-all and end-all for Amazon. Yes, almost every 007 has been shot here since the series began, and Denis Villeneuve's cinematic incarnation really has to start shooting here soon, given that it's out in 2028. But the launch of a James Bond video game that's not tied to the narrative of the films is quite telling. Because it isn't just the launch of a new video game. It's a stress test for how Bond fits into Amazon's constantly expanding content-making ecosystem.
There's a huge amount of reverence around the IP, and we've been working very closely with MGM turning into Amazon, so it's been a very close collaboration throughout.
In reality, this game was in production way before Amazon struck its deal with the Broccoli family for full creative control of the franchise. But if fans embrace the game, industry insiders believe this could mark the beginning of a new 007 strategy, moving towards a world of interconnected releases, spin-off side characters, as well as more movies. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
So, me and Wilf have different views on Bond. Wilf loves it, I'm not a fan. And I have to say, I put out a poll on X about whether or not people like Bond, and I don't think I've ever seen such an emphatic endorsement of one position. And it's Wilf's.
91%.
So they're great. And 9% say they can't stand
Although
them.
I'm a little bit worried because it's only 44 votes so far.
Exactly.
So as people kind of cotton on to this, maybe it's not very representative yet.
It's not representative at all.
Early numbers are in and they're good.
Yeah,
but they're early.
Good for pro Bond.
But we shall see, yeah, exactly. But the game looks kind of dated, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not a modern day gamer. I was not perhaps much of an old day gamer, but it looks like it was made in our era.
Yeah, what, a long time ago?
Of computer game. Maybe you still game. I've never asked you.
No, I'm not really. No,
I didn't have you down as one.
No, I'm not.
So I just sort of took that assumption into that.
No, I know what you mean though.
I hope the new films are, really modern and brilliant. With the history, obviously. We shall see. They've got to decide who it is first. The director's great, though.
Who's the director?
I've forgotten his name, but he did the Dune movies, which are awesome. So, Denis Villeneuve, there we go. Name just came to me. And they've obviously got, a massive budget behind it, so it should be good.
Yeah, exactly. But where will they go? I mean, for me, the only good Bond was Daniel Craig. Everyone else was terrible. So I know that's an opinion that most people don't agree with.
He was fantastic early, and then the last ones weren't great.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that comes down to the movies you get given. Like Pierce Brosnan, fantastic, but one good movie, 3 not great movies. Well, not his fault.
Yeah. But right, enough on Bond.
Connery,
although, if you hate Bond, get on X and vote for my poll, please.
We've been told to have a look at the weather now.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The southwest will hang onto the heat today, but eastern parts will be cooler with a wind off the North Sea. It'll be dry this morning, bar the odd shower over southern Britain. Most places can expect plenty of sunshine, but eastern Scotland and northeastern England look rather dull. It'll turn out very warm again for many, especially in the southwest, but eastern parts will be much cooler than recently, with near average temperatures in the grey northeast. Central England and Wales can expect a few thunderstorms later, while the northeast will see sunny spells developing inland. I always think it's a bit unfair when we describe an area as looking dull. We mean the weather.
Not the place.
Not the place. That's your weather.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about your energy bills to an energy-saving expert and what you should be doing ahead of that increase that is expected in energy bills, that will come in energy bills from July.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of
tremendous support.
What country?
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch way. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw two guys, two bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. The energy price cap is set to increase by 13%, or around £200, to £1,862 in July, using the long-standing methodology to calculate it. We're joined by Sabrina Hock, the energy expert at Uswitch, specialising in tariffs, switching behaviour and wholesale pricing. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So an increase of 13%. Talk us through what drives that increase, because some might have expected a bigger, it's very big in pound terms, but a bigger percentage increase given how much the raw commodities have gone up.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, you're right. The official price cap has been announced today at £1,862, so a huge 13% increase on April's price cap. And the main driver of that is this conflict in the Middle East. So the global wholesale gas market and the costs have been very, very volatile over the last few months, and mainly driven by this conflict. Because the UK buys gas on an international market, we're now seeing the effect of that in our household bills. So whilst at the start of the conflict in March, yes, so I think we were seeing the price cap expectation to be around the £2,000 mark. So it has come down slightly, and there is a little bit of softness in the market now. And that's why it's a really great time for customers to not sort of bury their heads in the sand. It's a little bit difficult to talk about winter when we're in the midst of a heat wave, but we're encouraging customers to take action now and actually look at maybe moving on to a switch tariff if they're in a position to do so, to give themselves that kind of peace of mind and certainty in this very volatile market.
And it's worth, obviously, therefore, highlighting the point, it's gone up 13% for the July quarter, which obviously is not expected to be a heavy heating or energy usage quarter, so the increase in light of that. So what exactly are you advising people do when you say switching, and what do you mean by that?
So what we know is most of the UK, so around 60% of the UK, are on a standard variable tariff or default tariff. So if you haven't switched your energy for about 12 to 15 months, it's likely you've been moved onto this tariff. Now, those customers are the ones that will be impacted by any increases in the price cap. So for those customers, what's the best thing that they can do right now is run a quick comparison. It takes minutes to run a comparison and see if they can actually move on to a fixed tariff. So there are about 26 fixed tariffs at the moment, which are cheaper than the current July price cap. The cheapest one offering about £250 savings. So for those customers, it's a really great option for them to look at running a comparison and see if they can lock in their rates for about a year or so to give them this peace of mind that in the winter, when we're using a lot more gas and electricity to stay warm, their bills won't be spiking.
That's interesting. I mean, and obviously the certainty that you get from that to some people is sort of priceless. That said, would they not risk locking in a 12-month rate when the war is still going? If the war ended the following day, would they live to regret locking that price in?
So what we know is energy providers are very reactive to any changes in the market. But let's face it, that the war doesn't look like it's ending tomorrow. And so with this volatility in mind, the best thing customers can do is to actually give themselves some security and peace of mind by locking in today. By moving to a fixed tariff, most cases, customers are going to be saving against the price cap. So if you're in a position to move to a fixed tariff, if you know you're coming off or coming to the end of your current fixed tariff, so if you've got 49 days or so left in your fixed tariff, you can actually move on to another fixed tariff and switch to another provider without incurring any exit fees. So the advice is that actually moving on to a fixed tariff will more often than not offer savings against the price cap.
Sabrina, thanks so much for joining us. Well, we're out of time, but there's Sabrina Hock from USwitch. Thanks so much.
Feels weird to think about heating when it's really hot, doesn't it? Not to say it isn't super important. I know it's like something people worry about already, but it's just...
But by the way, on these points, this is for the July quarter, July, August and September. So, it's gone up. It's gone up 13%. It's gone up 200 quid. But if the war persists and we, in 3 months' time, we're getting the price cap for the final quarter of the year, then things could be worse. If the war ends, obviously, different situation.
Talking more about energy bills in the next hour. Also, of course, the Tony Blair intervention. Stay with us. See you in a few moments.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story.
The battle for number 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek.
It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Let's get to it.
The energy price cap jumps over £200 amid warnings the Iran war will further push winter bills higher.
A warning from Tony Blair that Labour risks lurching to the left and should focus on future-proofing the UK rather than leadership dramas.
The fifth child has died after getting into trouble swimming in a river with friends as the heat wave hits record temperatures.
We'll also be talking about how Britain's spy chief has revealed how Russia is relentlessly targeting democracy in the UK.
Plus, we see how illegal casinos are still able to target children to bet real money on gaming platform Roblox. Very good morning to you. We start with the energy price cap, which has risen. It's been announced today by Ofgem, the regulator, and for the quarter beginning in July, the 3 months beginning in July, it has risen by nearly £200, by 13% from £1,641 for the current quarter beginning in April to £1,862 for the next quarter bringing in July. 13% increase, 200 quid increase, of course, very significant, particularly in light of the fact that we're now talking about the summer quarter beginning in July, where, of course, energy usage isn't expected to be that high. But it isn't that significant when you compare it to the big jumps that we saw when Russia invaded Ukraine. Of course, a reasonable thing to compare things to, given the Iran war, given the fact that raw commodity prices for things like oil and gas have almost doubled year to date, depending on which metric you look at. Now, back then, if the government hadn't stepped in, we would have been talking about £4,000 for the average energy bill. In fact, the government did bring in the energy price guarantee in October 2022. So these three bars here are indicative of where things would have been. In fact, they capped prices at £2,500 and people didn't end up paying those levels. But looking at the comparison there of what things would have happened free floating, you might say that this increase, while significant, while big for a summer quarter, could have been worse in light of what we've seen over the course of the last few months with the Iran war. A reminder that what we're talking about here is just the average household's expected bill for the course of a full year, as opposed to exactly what you'll pay. If you're on a floating rate and you're very energy intensive, you'll pay more. If you're very efficient, you'll pay less. Now, I mentioned the average household because I just want to show you the second chart. You might see another number out there today, 1,663, that might imply it's going up less than perhaps the first chart showed. That's because Ofgem's also changing the way they calculate the average household. So the last chart is the right one to look at for a like-for-like comparison, quarter over quarter. But going forward, they've changed how they're going to calculate what the average household, the representative household is. And this is actually quite good news. This is just because as a nation, we're using less energy. We're using 7% less electricity, 17% less gas, in large part since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. People have tried to tighten their belts on energy efficiency because costs went up so much then. So this number's also going to be out there today, 1,663, but you can't compare that quarter over quarter because it's based on a change of calculation going forward. But an encouraging reason to change the calculation going forward, that we're becoming a bit more energy efficient.
Really interesting stuff. And look, I know it's kind of crazy to think in the heat wave, but certainly a big story as the weather gets colder over the next year. For sure. If things persist, the war persists with commodity prices as they are, if we get into the winter months, then clearly things will rise further. Now, Tony Blair, Labour's most successful ever leader, the man who won 3 elections, is warning today that Labour is playing with fire if it focuses on a personality-driven leadership contest rather than a policy shift. His main claim is that Labour risks retreating to its comfort zone on the left, prioritising a growing welfare state and failing to prepare the UK for rapidly evolving technology. So it's a 5,000-word essay. In it, this is one passage that we've just pulled out for you. Governments which succeed don't start with a personality contest or a political question. How do we save the country from reform? They start with an idea, a project, a governing purpose, an analysis of what is wrong and a plan to put it right. The best political space from which this can be achieved is what I call the radical centre. The centre, properly defined, is where you put policy first and politics last. So you begin with the question, what is the right answer? So what is the right answer? Well, he's made a couple of policy suggestions. I'm just going to hop up and show you...
Were you about to ask me that?
No, that would be... Well, I'd be quite interested to know what you thought, actually. We'll spin it back to you later.
Arsenal should always be given preferential treatment. That's my answer.
I'm glad he's not shot, because I know how irritating that is for non-Arsenal fans, but there you go. Here are Tony Blair's suggestions, not about Arsenal. The first one is removing obstacles to growth. He's actually pinpointed, slightly awkwardly, some of the things that this Keir Starmer government's done, for example, national insurance for employers, rising minimum wage, employment rights bill, for example. He's also talked a lot about energy prices, so he wants to reverse the position on the North Sea oil and gas licences, so perhaps a bit of a snub to Miliband there. He talked an awful lot about driving more investment into artificial intelligence. This is clearly the kind of future-looking policy that he thinks whoever is the next Labour leader needs to focus on. And finally, EU relations. But he's not talking about getting closer to the EU, as you might expect. He actually says reversing Brexit isn't the answer. So this is the kind of Tony Blair policy platform, if you like. But I guess he's just trying to open a bit of a debate, isn't he, among people in number 10 right now and people who might be in number 10 in future. Yeah, and Rob's here to discuss it with us a bit. And when it's sort of cross, you might wonder whether it is a sort of dig at a particular potential future leadership candidate, but it's broader than that. There's plenty of swipes in here at recent government policy as well.
Yeah, it's quite sort of apolitical from a kind of party political sense anyway. And interestingly, Tony Blair's been on the airwaves the last sort of half an hour or so. And it was interesting listening to him that he's saying that, he said in that interview, that he doesn't believe the right or the left have a sort of exclusive right to come up with the correct answers on this. And you run through some of the big criticisms where he clearly feels that the policy is not meeting the moment. Things like welfare spending too high, triple lock can't carry on, defence spending too low, economic growth nowhere needs to be prioritised, energy prices too high. Look, it's stuff that most people would agree with. It's also stuff that you could say is more at the centre of what maybe the Conservatives are offering at the moment than the Labour Party, when you think about a focus on welfare spending, on pulling back from net zero because of energy prices being too high as well. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a broader assault, if you like, than just going towards Labour or the government. But be in no doubt, I think it lands with the biggest thump on the current government, because he's basically saying that there's no coherent plan at the moment. I think there's a real central part to this, which is about doing what's right, even if it's hard, as opposed to what's popular. And with that, you mentioned welfare came up, and it's a sort of obvious example where even the government, I think, initially felt they needed to cut welfare spending in a certain way and obviously back down on that. And I think when you frame things like simply saying, do what actually will improve the country and then tackle how you sell it to the country afterwards, as opposed to pursuing what's popular, it makes a lot of sense, without getting into the details of any particular policy area. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe if there's a criticism of it, it sort of diminishes the role of personality and politics in all this. The difference between now and when Tony Blair was in office was that you had a better economy back then and more money to play with, so money was able to be put into the NHS to improve the NHS. That is, is palpably not the situation we're in now, which means that the sort of political skill, I guess, in making these changes probably has to be higher, more sophisticated, and it's just more important now to be able to sell this hard stuff than potentially it was back then, because there are bigger trade-offs to look at right now than there were in 1997 or through the new Labour years. So, I mean, if there's a criticism of it, it is maybe that, yes, you do need the kind of policy base to sort of keep you rooted, but actually the difficulty of the situation we're in, the trade-offs, and also just how politics is transmitted to the public and how people engage in it means that actually maybe the kind of more almost frivolous side of this, as Tony Blair seems to suggest, of personality in politics is potentially more important. And also, just picking up what you said, because I think it is quite key, actually, that, the policy comes first and then you sell it. I remember, reading Tony Blair's book on leadership
before an interview that I did with him, I think it was probably about a year ago, and he was like, actually, you know, you shouldn't really listen to what the public think. He was like, you have to decide what you want to do as a leader and then do it. And then if people don't like it, they vote you out, which is democracy. And I just think that is quite an interesting, unfocused, groupy way of thinking about policy first, then you sell it as a leader, and then people decide.
Yeah, I don't think he's diminishing the need for personality to then deliver it, the need for communication skills. It's just what you put first. And I think there's another point in this, which is, you know, long-term, what works, not short-term, what wins you votes. And I think lots of really interesting points to it. But the other point, which does come across, depending on which chunk you focus on, is there's a lot of implicit and at times explicit criticism for all different factions.
Everyone,
basically everyone. Yeah, including of the party he obviously represents, which probably means not everyone will listen to the content.
Yeah, I mean, he's not, you know, universally popular. It's probably an understatement within Labour. And also just the difficulty of, you know, I understand the policy logic in saying don't just go whichever way the wind blows, but I guess my only caution with the sort of how that contrasts with personality politics is in an election campaign, how does a campaign rooted in I'm giving you some honest, unvarnished, hard choices come up against what we see from the left and the right in terms of the Greens and Reform, who aren't necessarily sort of bound by that, who will promise the earth even if it doesn't quite add up.
Do you know, it's funny though, just to dwell, we say he's not that popular now. I mean, he is the most successful election-winning political leader in this country since World War II, not just in recent decades. So we shouldn't always rush to say he's not that popular, because clearly there are some unpopular things about him. And I do wonder as well the extent to which actually there's a bit of taking the voter for granted or underestimating their intelligence when people go for short-term policies as opposed to the sensible... Like, people will take the medicine if you sell it to them. I guess I mean, this is his point. This is his point. And it's difficult, but we're so short-term, and it's clearly not really worked, that across many parties. But maybe people would take the medicine if it's offered to them. We just had a guest last hour that said, don't take the medicine. So I'm not sure. Maybe not.
Rob, thanks.
Rob, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Now, the temperature has been rising, which, you know, for some people is great. Others, of course, have been struggling with the heat. And there is a very, very tragic side of this as well. Because news to bring you this morning that a fifth child has died from drowning after going swimming in open water as a heatwave peaked yesterday.
It's believed to be a 12-year-old boy who was swimming in the river at Ribchester in Lancashire, who's here with more of this very sad news. Not the only one in recent days.
Not the only one, and this heat wave has come on very rapidly. So the temperatures rose very, very quickly. But what has then that meant is that the water temperatures have stayed quite cold because it takes a few days for the water temperatures to catch up. Now, Lancashire Police saying that they retrieved the body of a 12-year-old boy from the River Ribble yesterday evening after an extensive search by their officers in conjunction with the local fire service and the ambulance service. But it brings the total so far from this heat wave in terms of the number of children who've died entering bodies of water to 5 in the UK. And then over in the Republic of Ireland, one 15-year-old girl also died on a beach in County Dublin. So there's been quite a few now of people getting into the water, getting into difficulties, and it's because it's so cold that RNLI is saying that there's a very real risk that you can get cold water shock, and that basically takes your breath away, your muscles seize up, and then we've seen those devastating impacts.
Oh, I just find these stories so sad, because, you know, there's something so joyful about someone just like, oh, it's really hot, let's just go for a swim or whatever. And I guess the warning here is that even if you're a strong swimmer, the shock of the water, I guess going from being hot outside to being freezing in the water, it can be so dangerous, right?
It can be really dangerous. And, you know, you can't really blame children for wanting to get cool in this hot weather, unseasonably hot, because remember, it is still only spring. It feels like summer in places, but it's still only spring. What we're hearing from fire chiefs is that parents need to be having conversations with their family members, with their children, to warn them about the dangers of going into the likes of canals, reservoirs, rivers, quarries, anything like that, where there is a body of water, it can be deceivingly warm, but actually very, very cold.
Well, great stuff, thank you. Now we're going to look at how illegal casinos are still able to target children next on the gaming platform Roblox. We'll be right back with that.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Okay, but listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw two guys, two bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
So that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Thanks for being with us. Claire Coutinho, Shadow Secretary of State for Energy, Security and Net Zero, here with us today. So in the heat wave, I guess all thoughts are on how to get cool, and you're calling today for development rules to be changed to make it easier to get aircon in homes.
Yes, so we have this de facto ban on air conditioning in homes that was brought in building regulations in 2021. And the thought process was that they use too much energy. Aircon uses too much energy. But this is not how the rest of the world is looking at aircon. So if you look at British homes, only 3% have aircon compared to something like 90% in the US, Japan and Korea. So the argument that I've been making as Energy Secretary and now Shadow Energy Secretary is that we have to change our mindset to energy. We've got to stop thinking that using energy is a bad thing. It's the foundation of civilization. It's the source of prosperity and growth in your country. And actually something like aircon can make a real difference to people's lives, as I'm sure your viewers would have felt over the last few days.
I mean, I think it's important to be careful with language because it's not a complete ban, is it, right? It's just that building regs require developers to look for other cooling methods like windows, shutters, ventilation for new homes before aircon.
So you have to exhaust all these other possibilities. That's what the regulations call for. So airflow, shutters, awnings, all of these different things. But what it means is that basically no one does it. It's a de facto ban because it makes it so hard for it to get through that people don't do it, which is why you've got that disparity. Like I said at the beginning, only 3% of British homes have aircon. And the truth is, you know, whether it's productivity, whether it's children in school, there are so many benefits for people being able to to cool their homes. And why should the British public uniquely not be able to do so?
I mean, you said it was brought in 2021, obviously under the Conservatives, right?
Yes, and look, I've not shied away from any of this in the energy policy brief. I've said we've got to change the approach of the past. Net zero legislation we've called for to go. I see Tony Blair today is sort of calling for the same thing.
So you got it wrong? That's what you're saying?
So
Hands up, you got it wrong.
I've been very clear that I thought the net zero legislation that we passed was a mistake. And it's because you end up in situations like this, where you've got an approach to energy that is making us less prosperous, it's making us poorer, it's making our quality of life and living standards worse. And it's doing that uniquely to Britain. So whilst you've got China now it's half of the world's coal capacity, 30% of the world's emissions, we here are adopting a hair-shirt approach, which is turning everybody off, and we can't continue.
I guess, and look, I appreciate your honesty in saying, it was the Conservatives and we got it wrong. But I guess people's trust is that, if you thought that a few years ago, how can you have changed your minds? Now, I note that, Kemi Badenoch was number 2 in the department that put through these reforms in 2021.
So when that legislation on net zero was passed, it was 2019, it was before I was in Parliament, but there was only 2 people who spoke up in that debate and said, hang on, how is this going to work? We've got to look at costs and what it means for people. Kemi Badenoch was one of those 2 people, so she has been consistent. When I came in as Energy Secretary, it was that last final year of Conservative government, I started by saying net zero can't be impoverishing people. It can't, it's immoral to make us uniquely poor. So actually you've got 2 people now in these positions in the Conservative Party. Okay. Our views have been pretty similar. Our principles have stayed the same.
Apart from when she let this legislation through when she was in the department.
And it was actually devised under Rob Jenrick, who's now part of Reform.
Well, it was passed in 2021, December, though.
But it was worked upon him. But the point is, we're not shying away from the fact that Conservatives got things wrong in the past. And this is the point of opposition. You've got to look at where you got things wrong. It'd be completely mad to keep the approach that got you chucked out of the last election. And one of the things that I think is important, and Kemi thinks is important, is changing our approach to energy.
Can I ask you about social media? Because it feels like this is all coming to a head, right? The consultation has closed. There was an overwhelming response, unexpectedly, from parents. What do you want to see now from the government?
Look, I feel really strongly about this because all the evidence shows that under 16s on social media is causing huge harm. And you've got children as young as 3 and 4 who've got smartphones now. You've got predators accessing them online, all the problems that we've seen around anxiety and mental health. So I do think there should be a ban in place. I mean, I would go as hard as you could possibly go on this. I think credit to Kemi for really leading the national conversation on this, and Laura Trott, who's our shadow education secretary. And you've just got to be very clear. Lots of freedoms for adults, but we have to protect children. And this is one of the greatest harms that is now happening to children in our society.
Just finally, Tony Blair's intervened today on the future of the Labour Party. Among other things, he's called for cuts to welfare. He's called for an end to a focus on net zero. I mean, do you think he'd be welcome in the Conservative Party these days?
Well, he seems to agree a lot with Kemi Badenoch's approach. And the thing that I would say is this. You've got to be really clear on what's going wrong in the country. So the Conservatives, we failed in government. Labour are now failing in government. Reform are not keeping their promises at the council level. And you've got to understand what's going wrong. We do need to get a grip on welfare. We do need to have a new approach to growth. We have to change our energy policy, the thing that I'm talking about today. If you don't do those things, governments will continue to fail the public because they won't be able to live up to their promises. We have to change that.
OK, thank you very much. Good to have you on the programme. Claire Coutinho there.
It's been more than a year since Sky News revealed children using the gaming platform Roblox were being lured into gambling online. Both Roblox and the Gambling Commission said they were taking action.
Our latest investigation, though, shows it's very much still happening, even when people openly say they're underage. Here's our science and technology reporter, Mickey Carroll.
Roblox prides itself on letting children be anything they can imagine. Well, over a year ago, we reported that illegal casinos were targeting the game's young users and letting them gamble. Some of these children were betting hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of Roblox money. And Roblox told us at the time it was taking numerous steps to shut the casinos down. But when we checked in on how that was going, we found this. A plethora of casinos, some old, some new, all luring young Roblox users into gambling. On the chat rooms linked to the casinos, users openly admit they're underage, but their accounts remain active. Some are just 13 years old. These casinos advertise to Roblox users on social media and then ask them to log into the casino with their Roblox credentials. From that point on, they can gamble with their Roblox currency, which is bought using real money. Some casinos allow users to withdraw any winnings as Roblox items, others will let them be withdrawn as cryptocurrency. This isn't necessarily new. We found similar problems the last time we investigated, and that's exactly the issue. It seems that nothing has changed.
The fact that nothing's changed, I think I blame the unlicensed casinos, obviously, should shoulder the clear blame, but they're going to act in this way. So really what's more surprising and more saddening is that our statutory regulator, the Gambling Commission, hasn't done more to stop them. I think Roblox also has to shoulder some of the blame in this instance because it's providing what's effectively a cryptocurrency and allowing it to be used elsewhere outside of its website and not taking serious enough action to protect its customers, who are largely young people.
Roblox hasn't responded to our request for comment, but sources at the company told me it's playing whack-a-mole with these casinos, which are actually pretty bad for its reputation. It wants more support from regulators and law enforcement because it says while it can control what happens on its platform, it can't control what happens away from it. For the people campaigning to stop this kind of illegal activity, it's a familiar problem, one that seems to be intensifying.
It's become quite commonplace amongst children, of 7 years and upwards, to actually now be gambling in that sense, and that is mad.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says these casinos target children because then they can create lifelong habits.
If you get children used to gambling their cash, then all that happens is it gets worse in later life.
The Gambling Commission told us they'd been in touch with Roblox about the casinos we found. The Commission spokesperson said criminals running unlicensed websites are unscrupulous. They simply don't care about offering gambling to children or vulnerable adults. This is why we take reports of illegal sites extremely seriously and are already taking action against those flagged by Sky News. Right now, the people trying to stop these casinos are playing whack-a-mole. The problem is, while they're trying to catch up, it's children that are being harmed. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Well, following that Sky News investigation, one of the casinos you saw there, Rollbet, has shut down to all users, while another Blocks Flip has banned UK users from its site. Rollbet warned its users to withdraw any money from their accounts before it closed, saying it was shutting due to operational constraints, ethical concerns, management challenges and staff personal reasons.
Coming up, we are going to be talking about the importance of donating blood. That's coming up in just a few moments.
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die? This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
Are these immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination?
Of course.
It's a big shift by President Trump.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. Tony Blair says he wants Labour to embrace what he calls the radical centre and put policy ahead of politics.
Well, Labour's former head of political strategy, Greg Cook, joins us now. Great to have you on the programme, Greg. Thanks so much for being with us. What did you make of the Tony Blair essay?
Well, personally, I agreed with, found myself agreeing with quite a lot of it. But I think what's really fascinating about it is just how heretical all of this sounds within modern day Labour politics. I think there's really nobody else, certainly of any standing in the party, who's saying anything like this. And it's a testament to the fact that really over the last 20 years, Blair and Blair supporters have lost all the key battles within the party, particularly over the leadership when Gordon Brown inherited without an election, then crucially when Ed Miliband was elected over David Miliband in 2010, and the soft left consensus, which Blair then talks about, has re-emerged. And when he talks about that, he's talking not just about that post-Blair era, but it's going back to the 1980s and the era of Neil Kinnock, when the party, really moved into what he calls this comfort zone, which is really about a belief in a high-spending state, a mistrust of business, and the anathema of making cuts. And that's the crucial thing which has emerged really over the last 10, 15 years, and really is the legacy of the Corbyn era as much as anything else. And in fact, Blair talks about the soft left consensus. Much of what we've heard recently has sounded a lot more like the hard left. We've had Andy Burnham talking casually about neoliberalism having been a mistake over the last 40 years. We've had the Prime Minister talking about how everybody tries to go back to a status quo which never worked. And that sounds more like the kind of quasi-revolutionary talk which you'd expect from the hard left of the party. And what's emerged from that, which Blair's identified, is that there is actually no real policy disagreement within the party at the moment. And that's why they're having such difficulty in trying to understand why they're so unpopular.
You mentioned there, Blair versus Kinnock, who obviously had different policy platforms. The big difference to why, or one of the reasons why the Blair platform was fair to say more successful than the Kinnock platform was, of course, he won multiple big elections. But so did Keir Starmer. So it's not right to say this time round the policy platform of the last couple of years failed to win an election.
No, that's right. And, Blair, in his essay, alludes to that. But he interprets it, and I think many people would share this view, as being an election victory which was much more about the unacceptability of the Tories than it was about, positive approbation for Labour. And probably not much attention was paid to actually what Labour would do, either within the party, quite understandably in a way, because it was a very unusual era beforehand when there really wasn't much opportunity. Things were so fast moving for the kind of debate which Blair is asking for. But I think going back to 2024, there was a period in the run up to that election when the view was that Starmer was actually kind of morphing into a kind of quasi-Blairite, and the concentration in the manifesto was on Blairite, Brownite type things, like not raising taxes, like having fiscal rules and so on. And that all sounded like it was going to be much more like a new Labour type government than perhaps what has emerged, which is much more like a tax and spend soft left government. And that, I think, is perhaps what Blair's putting his finger on as the core problem which Labour has to address.
Greg, I'm interested to talk to you because you were right at the heart, I guess, of the kind of Blair-Brown project. You really were seen as someone who had the finger on the pulse of public opinion and where the public's mind was at. So I'm interested in your view on what is going on right now, because it feels like, we've got the kind of Keir Starmer camp, you've got the Andy Burnham camp, which I guess is more kind of soft left, you described as hard left. Then you've got Wes Streeting, who I guess is trying to tack the more centre ground. What do you think the public is crying out for?
Well, I think that's the $64,000 question, and we've got this unprecedented situation with these insurgent parties, sharing between them 40% or more of the vote in the polls, and the major parties don't know really how to deal with that. And another point which Blair makes about this comfort zone politics is what he describes as the delusion about how that Labour likes to hold about how working class voters in particular voting for right-wing parties is actually a protest against Labour not being left-wing enough. And that is at the core of the debate within the party about how to deal with or should be at the core of the debate in the party about how to deal with the rise of Reform and indeed the Greens. It's a very live debate, and it's in a sense going to come to a head in Makerfield, because there you have a very popular local candidate standing essentially on the platform that Labour needs to reappeal to these voters who are voting for reform by being more radical in inverted commas, which means in practice, it seems, probably higher taxes on the rich, taxes on assets and land and so on, higher public spending, more investment, obviously, in those kinds of communities. And that's going to be put to the test because, clearly that interpretation, if Burnham were to fail that in that election, and my personal instinct is he'll probably win, but if he were to lose that would really leave the Labour Party at a loss about where to go next. In terms of what the public actually wants from all this, I think they're as confused as everybody else, and they clearly don't have much time for any of the parties, including Reform, whose leadership is not very popular. There's no great enthusiasm for anybody out there. And so, there really is a big opportunity for people with new ideas to actually come on and make a difference.
Greg, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We're also showing you now all of the candidates standing in Makerfield in the by-election coming up on the 18th of June.
Those candidates there all standing in that by-election in Makerfield. And now the head of Britain's spy agency is going to deliver a pretty stark warning later today. Anne Keith-Butler from GCHQ will tell us that Russia is relentlessly targeting the UK and Europe's critical infrastructure and democracy. So that warning coming from the head of GCHQ.
And we'll be monitoring that live, of course, when she gives that speech, expected to focus on those areas later today on Sky News.
Yeah, she's talking as well, interesting, about the threat posed by China. So in her words, there's a kind of science and tech power who the UK risks falling behind. So I think, the kind of more military threat of Russia and then the soft power, I guess, of China.
Yeah, their brains will be there, so all eyes on that throughout the day. Now let's turn to something the NHS always needs more of, and that's blood donations.
Well, the rules changed in 2021 to allow more people to donate, and there has been some good news because more gay and bisexual men are donating blood in England than ever before. So a new poll of male donors found 7.5% are gay or bisexual compared to just 1.8% in 2014.
Meanwhile, people are being urged to give blood by an unlikely source. The heavy metal band Metallica is asking fans to donate blood and plasma ahead of the UK leg of their world tour. The group wants followers to contribute around their upcoming gig dates in Glasgow, Cardiff and London.
What a great thing to campaign for, genuinely.
Yeah,
amazing.
Absolutely.
Love it. We speak now to Andrew Harris, who's the head of donor engagement at the Welsh Blood Service. So how many people are donating blood and do we need more?
Good morning to you all. So from a UK perspective, we aim to have 7 days of stock, and that is all across the UK. So it's very important that we constantly have a steady flow of people booking, which is why it's critical when bands like Metallica give us an opportunity to work with them, that we take full advantage.
Are they just kind of getting behind a broad campaign, or are you partnering more deeply to have, sites where people can give blood presumably it's not a great health warning to give blood just before you kind of stand up at a 3-hour concert.
So from a Welsh perspective, the gig's actually taking place on a Sunday, so there would be no collection. So we're not going to get heavy metal rocking getting in the way of collecting blood donation. But there's a 2-week window from a Welsh perspective. So between the 22nd of July and the 22nd of June, and the 3rd of July, Metallica would be playing. So a week around the gigs in Wales, we would be encouraging people to book and give blood under the Metallica banner.
And do you know why they particularly are backing this campaign?
So we've been really fortunate. We actually found out about this campaign because it had worked so well in Australia and the United States. And I can't speak more highly of the band. They've been so supportive in the collaboration, and the charity has been a fantastic support. So all within my hands, and they're just keen to raise awareness of the importance of blood donation. And from a blood donation perspective, what's really important is that we don't just see this as an opportunity to get people to give blood once for Metallica. We're really trying to encourage people to start donating with us. If you've ever thought about it before, that this becomes your route in to become a lifesaver.
Just looking at the stats in front of me now about gay and bisexual men, so more than ever are donating blood. The thing that is quite unbelievable, to be honest, is that before 2017, I think it's right saying that men couldn't donate blood if they'd had sex of any kind with a man in the last year. I mean, so is that completely gone now? And it does feel completely staggering, to be honest, but great to see so many more gay and bisexual men now giving blood.
Yeah, safety is so important for donating blood and the whole blood donation process, and the amount of effort that goes into making sure that we've got one of the safest supply chains in the world, I can't understate. And it's fantastic that the assessment for the assessment of individualized risk, which was introduced in 2021, means that not just gay men, but the risk was individualized to the person donating, which means that more people were safely able to come to the door and donate with us, which obviously from a blood donation perspective is exactly what we want. We want people ready and able to give blood safely.
And also just looking, so the 2021, the change introduced, so anyone who's had the same sexual partner for the last 3 months can now be a donor. So it kind of, I think, strips out the prejudice, right, about the sexual behaviours of people who are gay men in particular, and just makes it more about purely on kind of safety grounds, right?
Exactly that, yeah, and that's exactly why the rules were brought in, to make sure that individual risk was addressed rather than people that were grouped. So it's really important to us, not just from a individual perspective, but when you take into consideration, there's a myth about people not being able to donate, for example, with tattoos. Well, the rule used to be 12 months and now it's 4 months. So the science is constantly evolving, and we are benefiting from that science evolution, and it's really helpful because it means that we can see more people can safely donate and save lives of patients in need. And obviously that's exactly what this is about. It's fantastic that we've got bands like Metallica, not just in the UK but across the world, making a difference. But it's really important for us that we do that and maximise the opportunity now and get people on this donation wagon.
Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Diolch, thank you.
Now, a new and chilling warning about deepfakes. We're hearing how scammers are deploying sophisticated deepfakes to con even the most wary of adults.
So in a survey of 500 adults, 7 in 10 failed to identify what was real and what wasn't from a selection of videos.
Well, earlier, Catherine Nibbs, who's an expert in online harm, told us that the use of deepfakes in creating child sexual abuse material is a crisis.
The crisis of our time is not social media, as it is the topic of the day, if you like, at the moment. I would certainly say, having worked with children who have been exploited online for the last 15, 16 years, the crisis of today is images that can be manipulated into child sexual abuse material. And children's faces are being used to create that data, and that data is then being used to manipulate, to blackmail, and to harass. And if we really, really want to kind of get to grips with this, we need to start focusing on how do we protect children, how do we ensure that their data and information isn't used by these AI systems in order to create those deepfakes.
There's obviously some really sickening and appalling areas here. There's which should be legislated against as if it's real. If you're making artificial child pornography images, it should be punished unbelievably firmly. There's a broader point, though, and this has started to be talked about a little bit. I've seen it picked up across different countries and more widely discussed in the last month or so, which is quite a simple solution to make it a law that if AI has been used to generate a video or audio, it's disclosed.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's not anti-free speech. It's not anti-embracing technology as a nation that you can use this. Just very simply have a bug top of the screen that says AI, and it could be a universal thing. And it's sometimes it's quite a simple solution you can get to it, and I hope these things start to be discussed more pertinently and we'll get to that point.
I mean, the other thing as well is having rights over your own likeness in the same way that you would have a right over a photograph you took or whatever. There's an interesting kind of online row going on between Carol Vorderman and a website that has created this kind of AI depiction of her, a video of her. She wants it taken down. They've said this is obviously satire, so we don't see any problem with it at all. I mean, these kind of test cases, I think, are quite interesting going forward, right?
Yeah, I'm really surprised by this one that you've mentioned, because clearly, if Rory Bremner came in and was doing political satire, he could impersonate anyone. At the same time, it's a company and it's a digital asset to design an AI version of you or I or Carol Vorderman, and I would think that would be protected by the image and likeness laws that we already have. But the very fact that this is open to debate just shows how they need to update it for the modern day.
Yeah.
And do we have hope that they will?
Well, it feels simple.
We're talking about social media, aren't we?
Oh, no, exactly. I know, honestly, I hear you. I really do. Right, let's try and cheer us up, shall we? Let's find out what the weather's up to.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the southwest will hang on to the heat today, but eastern parts will be a bit cooler with the wind off the North Sea. It will be dry this morning, though, apart from the odd shower over southern Britain. Most places should expect lots of sunshine, but eastern Scotland and north-eastern England, I'm afraid, look a little bit dull. But it will turn out very warm again for many, especially in the southwest. The eastern parts will be a lot cooler than they have been recently, with near-average temperatures in the grey north-east. Central England and Wales can expect a few thunderstorms later on. The north-east will see sunny spells developing inland, and there'll be little change elsewhere.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the all-new James Bond computer game, which came out today, or yesterday. Video game. Apparently you don't say computer game.
I thought we might.
We'll discuss it.
Who knew?
We'll get the terms wrong. That's next.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch way. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness.
If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely
dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mandani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Welcome back. We have a new James Bond, not in cinemas, not on film, but in computer games. Video games. 007 First Light dropped yesterday.
So Amazon's got the rights to Bond, right? And so everyone's wondering if this is their kind of soft launch, if you like, after their 007 takeover. As our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, reports a warning. There is flash photography throughout her report.
The name's Gibson, Patrick Gibson. There's a new James Bond in town, while fans are still waiting to hear who'll take over from Daniel Craig in the films. For the last 5 years, the Irish actor has had to hide the fact it's his voice and physical likeness in the new 007 video game, which he almost managed.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be the one to spill the beans.
Except to moms.
Yes, of course. Yeah. They all moms have clearance on official secrets.
It's a massive gaming launch, but does this also mark Amazon's soft launching its 007 takeover? While Gibson managed to keep his casting under wraps, his motion capture suit wasn't quite the glamour he'd had in mind.
Seeing yourself, kind of strolling into a big gala wearing a tuxedo when you're really in like a grey sock was a challenge.
For gamers, the release of 007 First Light is a big deal. But look, even if you're not into games, it's worth exploring some of the behind-the-scenes gameplay here, because the concept is a first. It's an origin story game which is clever. It means by creating a standalone Bond gaming universe, for the first time, they're not restricted to what's happening in the films. Of course, there's been a lot of focus on who might be best placed to take over from Daniel Craig in the films, with Amazon confirming auditions are underway. Callum Turner, Harris Dickinson and Jacob Elordi all getting a lot of mentions in the press. But for the first time, what happens here at Pinewood Studios, the spiritual home of the James Bond franchise, isn't the be-all and end-all for Amazon. Yes, almost every 007 has been shot here since the series began, and Denis Villeneuve's cinematic incarnation really has to start shooting here soon, given that it's out in 2028. But the launch of a James Bond video game that's not tied to the narrative of the films is quite telling, because it isn't just the launch of a new video game. It's a stress test for how Bond fits into Amazon's constantly expanding content-making ecosystem.
There's a huge amount of reverence around the IP, and we've been working very closely with MGM turning into Amazon, so it's been a very close collaboration throughout.
In reality, this game was in production way before Amazon struck its deal with the Broccoli family for full creative control of the franchise. But if fans embrace the game, industry insiders believe this could mark the beginning of a new 007 strategy, moving towards a world of interconnected releases, spin-off side characters, as well as more movies. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
We have to update. We were sort of saying we're not gamers. One of our team Matt was up till 1 a.m. playing it.
Yeah, so he said
it was excellent.
He said it was great, and that actually we shouldn't be sneering about it, and actually it was brilliant. So
we weren't really sneering about it. We're just acknowledging we're not gamers.
Yeah. But Matt is, and he's I don't know how he's been at work today, but
I think
quite tired.
Now I'm wondering whether he can take it as a work day off.
Yeah, exactly.
It's research.
Research, exactly.
Sophie and Will.
we're split on Bond, the movie as well. Wolf's a fan. I'm not a fan. But
Movies, plural. You know there's been more than one.
Yeah, but I have to say, Wolf is overwhelmingly in the right here.
Based on 64 votes.
Yeah, it's not a large sample size.
It's not a poll that set your followers alight.
No, 89% though say they love Bond. Although I did really appreciate an email we got into the inbox from, where is it, Graham. He says, sorry, I don't know, use X, and never will, fair enough. But he supports that I do not like Bond's side. A problem happens, Bond is sent, problem solved. I'm on your side, Sophie.
Classic mindless movies, which is what I go to the movies for. So, yeah, Graham, you're right, but sort of wrong.
At the same time. There you go.
So you've lowered the poll. I'm now 89% down to 87%. Still winning.
Yeah, overwhelmingly winning, I think is fair to say. To leave you with a little bit of detail on the moon landings.
Reminds me of Moonraker, another great Bond movie, this.
Seamless. Now, we've had a bit more detail about
the Moonraker one goes completely off the book. Anyway.
What is the book?
The book's actually about a missile called Moonraker that kind of like a sort of North Korean plot, you know, could hit the world, weapons of mass destruction, when the book would have come out in the 60s or 70s. And then the movies made it all about, you know, actually going into space shuttles.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Pretty different from the book.
There you go.
The book's better than the films.
We're going to run out of time to say this, by the way.
I know.
Basically, we've got more detail on NASA's plan to return to the moon. This time, they say they're staying.
Oh, I didn't know there was a promotional video. I need to watch this now. It comes, by the way, the day after China launched their latest mission to space, so sort of going back to the kind of Cold War era, where space race was a big part of it. And the Cold War era was an era where we really needed James Bond.
He would have sorted it all out, I'm sure.
That's it for today. Sky News Today up next.